Alkmaar, Feyenoord, Eindhoven, Ajax. We'll defeat them all.
You know we haven't won a title in almost 90 years?
Bruh.
Ronald, do you have any final words? Yeesh. Just avoid relegation. You're hired. Ronald Koeman is not a pretty fellow, and the squad did not really like the look of him or his ridiculous suit. However, the goal to avoid relegation with Go Ahead Eagles will not be an easy feat. Looking through the squad, there were a few issues. Center backs were nearly non-existent, and Koeman loves to use 3 of them. To him, everything comes best in 3s, which is definitely not an excuse for his poor defensive managerial ability. The next problem is the abundance of left backs. I guess the position will be fine if some get injured. The final problem is the abundance of wingers. Ronald wanted to play a 3-4-1-2, but with a lot of these guys just joining, that couldn't really be done. Now, a big reason Koeman was hired was due to his past with Bayern Munich. The resume says he was a youth coach there, and there were several Dutch articles mentioning it. I personally couldn't find anything, but the narrative remained. That's because the first ever signing was a loan from Bayern. Eyüp Aydin, who's an incredible midfielder for his age, and whose contract is expiring at the end of the season. He was joined by other loanees already at the club, including Oppegaard, Del Rio from Valencia, and Fontan of Celta de Vigo, who would start in the back 3. Before opening day, there was one more signing.
It's Shabalala! Goal! Bafana! Goal for South Africa! Goal for all Africa!
Go Ahead Eagles had the vibes, but would that be enough with AZ and PSV in the first 2 matches?
What did he say?
The Eredivisie is an 18-club league where the bottom 2 get relegated, and 16th goes into a playoff with a second division side to stay in the league. As the adventure continues, you'll learn more about the league and its teams. Opening day had AZ Alkmaar, a well-known Eredivisie side who last won the title in 2009. That was when Louis van Gaal was running things. They're currently filled with great first-team players like Sugawara and Jesper Karlsson, while also having several young players ready to take the next step. However, it'd be their midfield of Jordi Clasie and De Witt who would make the difference. A penalty given in the 63rd minute broke the deadlock, and Danny De Witt got behind the back line a few minutes later to grab AZ's second. By the way, if you end up enjoying the video, make sure to watch another at the end, as I've done series on several teams already. Alright, enjoy the rest. There must have been an agenda against Go Ahead Eagles.
You always think there's a campaign against you?
Yes.
Because PSV on the second match day was cruel. Coached by the legend Ruud van Nistelrooy, they are the second most successful club in the Netherlands, winning 24 league titles, and have won what is now known as the Champions League in 1988. Their key players are Xavi Simons, previously at PSG, fantastic ball winner named Ibrahim Sangare, and of course, the legend, Luke de Jong.
Be ready for these small moments.
The Eagles, though, would have their first great chance, as Adekanye smacked the bar from an odd angle. A little bit before the half, Eagles midfielder Lindberg needed some medical treatment, but PSV kept on playing. No. What is this? Unsportsmanlike conduct, clearly. That was a lone goal, and Koeman refused to shake Van Nistelrooy's hand after the fixture. The season wasn't getting better, with Groningen basically nullifying the Eagles' offense, ending in a 2-0 defeat. Then to finish off August, Sparta Rotterdam scored an early goal off a corner, stunning the crowd. The scoreline remained throughout the entire match, until very late, where Eyüp Aydin won a penalty. Could Romans give the Eagles their first goal of the season? If you wanted to see the Eagles go ahead, you needed to turn the table, as Koeman and co. were in last.
These dudes are all losing, they're not winning.
The club was desperate for money, so Dale being sold for 700k and the physio getting bought out by Ajax helped. In order for this train wreck to be stopped, several signings were made on deadline day. The son of Mark van Bommel, Ruben, was brought in on a free, a quick center back named John Boy was also signed for nothing, and the same could be said with the new starting right back, Ricardo van Rijn. There was one final player joining, a striker from Bayern Munich. Lucas Capaldo joined Go Ahead Eagles to help them score a goal. It wouldn't be easy, as his debut came against Feyenoord. With Lidberg and Stalker seemingly useless, all hopes were on this 19-year-old. With the side down 1-0 thanks to an unlucky deflection to Danilo Pereira, space was found behind Feyenoord's defense. Not just in the 64th minute, but in the 84th as well. Not only the first goals of the season, but a first win. His strikes and winning initially were a commonality. Victories versus FC Volendam and FC Emmen had him score in each. Heck, he even went on a 7-match scoring streak, hitting the back of the net against Ajax, SC Cambuur, Heerenveen, and NEC Nijmegen. None of these were won because heartbreak is a reality. A 76-minute Tadic goal for a loss to Ajax, a 95th minute equalizer from Bjorn Johnson versus Cambuur, and Heerenveen Sven van Beek's 89th minute winner was painful to watch. Nevertheless, Capado would go on again and score in an 8th consecutive league game with a lone goal against Excelsior. Stunning Twente 1-0 and losing to Vitesse 2-0 were respectable results, especially with them near the European places. Our turnaround can be thanked to the changes of the tactic from the fallout of matchday 4. That involved the wingers becoming inverted and the inverted wingbacks losing their first name. Now let's not talk about losing to a club named after a satellite in the Dutch Cup.
An historic feat that could reshape man's future.
In a world where the Netherlands actually won a World Cup, Go Ahead Eagles were beginning to make a push for European football. A Capado goal against Fortuna Sittard caused their manager to get sacked. Then versus Utrecht, a fairly respected club in the country, Van Rijn let it fly from distance. It seemed like the match was going in one direction, but a long ball caused John Boy to clatter his opponent and give Utrecht the equalizer from the spot. A big chance was missed in the 93rd minute, but off an ensuing corner, Ali Barak was highlighted. He was a player just bought for 90k up front, with a vision to make him a wide center back due to his incredible height. From the corner clearance, he received the ball, and with the instincts of his fullback ability, he took the ball wide and found a cross to stalkers, who tucked the ball home for the winner. The substitutes worked, but against AZ's narrow formation, the team was getting dominated. Odgaard specifically cost his team the lead, and would cost them the 3 points. That's because out of nothing, a ball to Marcelo led to a cross into the box for Capado, and Matt Ryan had an absolute howler. An insane win that probably wasn't deserved, but that would balance out with a 2-0 loss to PSV right after.
I expect a warm welcome tomorrow.
Concluding the final transfer dealings of the season, Williamson, a player I didn't really play, returned to Bate for 325k. Sven Janssen and Isaac Lidberg also left for cheap fees. Grumman's only notable in was, of course, another loan from Bayern, a versatile wingback named Angelo Bruckner. There are things that don't belong with each other. Pineapple on pizza, Paul Pogba on a football pitch, and Go Ahead Eagles in a European spot. However, another 2 great months made the latter a near reality. Capado was continuing doing his thing, scoring in wins versus Valvik and Sparta Rotterdam. Now, despite the team scoring 2 against Nijmegen, it still ended in a draw thanks to Landry Basket Di Mata. Well, and our keeper. Di Mata is the only player to score more than Lucas in the Eredivisie. Still, Capado wasn't stopping against Twente, scoring 2 in the first half, although that work would seemingly be in vain. After the interval, Twente responded with proper Antigas' goals, which tied the match. The game needed someone to influence it, and that brought on Shabalala, who made a pass to Marcelo, who passed it to Van Rijn. He, though, returned it to Marcelo in behind Twente's backline, and the young Dutchman had his shot parried right into Capado, whose positioning won it late. The Shabalala effect. With 9 appearances off the bench, which means he did not get a new contract. FC Emmen also required a late winner, this time from former Liverpool Academy prospect Adekanye. He didn't really do a lot this year, with that being his first. The month saw Valvik and Utrecht defeated again, thanks to more Capado goals, but it also had the first loss since PSV. In a match that could have gone either way, SC Cambuur stunned us with Michel Polisson getting behind a defense to win it for them. Grumman's ball knowledge on Cambuur is pretty low, but the man's got a list of things he hates, and Cambuur has risen up on that. In the Eredivisie, depending on who wins the cup, teams who currently finish either 4th to 7th or 5th to 8th go to a 4-team playoff for the Conference League playoff spot. With 8 games left, the Eagles were on track for one of them. A good result against Ajax would be a statement maker, but they've been running away with the league. Their manager was Joachim Löw, who was introduced as their new manager at the start of the season. Ever since the initial encounter, Chroo now has to set a reminder to bring hand sanitizer whenever he plays them. The quality between the clubs showed pretty quickly. With just a second on the ball, Bergwijn was able to smack this home. Aiden had an incredible chance right after, but he missed just like Tadic. Then Bergwijn nearly kicked the ball out of the stadium as his confidence was way too high. The Eagles were doing well for themselves, and miraculously won a penalty just 6 minutes following the break. Wrench is running to the fans for some reason. Romans was stepping up to make amends for the pen earlier in the season, but he missed. That wasn't the only unfortunate thing, as Ajax not long later extended the lead. Fine margins, but subs were needed, and 2 of them combined fantastically to get the Eagles back into the match. Van Bommel's first for the club, and with 15 to go, an Aiden free kick was delivered perfectly onto the head of John Boy. In the next few minutes, Bruckner cleared a sure goal, and in the ensuing moments, Marcelo smacked the bar. It got to the last 5 minutes, but holding on proved to be difficult, as Bergwijn popped up one final time to show off and gave Tony Martinez the game winner. All the good work that was being done was about to collapse. Outside of a win versus Excelsior and rescuing a draw versus Vitesse in the 92nd minute, the end of season run was awful. Fortuna Sittard proved to be stubborn with a 1-1 draw, Groningen stunned the home crowd in the 90th minute, Feyenoord was just a better team, although it should have been far worse than a 1-0 loss. Then FC Volendam at home was an embarrassment of a lifetime. They were fighting to avoid relegation, and fighting was what they brought. An opener from Antonucci in the 16th minute opened the floodgates as goal after goal kept coming. It'd be 4-0 by the 72nd, and the useless winger Oliver Valker Edvardsson got sent off. He immediately was sent to the reserves, where he wasn't heard from again. From an outsider's perspective, it's hard to judge what could have caused this. Was Kroeman's managerial ability not as good as his counterfeit reputation? Well, he needed to use those abilities with a team meeting, where he stopped a losing run. However, some would consider his side lucky to get out of Heerenveen with a draw. That had them finish the league campaign in 7th, which is an incredible accomplishment. He looks like he should be a McDonald's mascot, but Kroeman had the chance to bring European football. Due to Ajax's cup win over 2nd division side FC Dordrecht, these 4 teams had a chance for European football. A mini knockout stage tournament with 2 legs in the semis and 2 legs in the final. So Go Ahead Eagles had to take on FC Twente, who once won the Eredivisie with Steve McLaren.
Champions League.
With no wins in the last 5, this was a massive challenge on Kroeman's men. But in the home fixture, Rashan Fernandez opened the scoring in the 5th minute. A former Twente player who made 1 senior appearance for them, he was having a similar struggle at his current club. He barely played in the first half of the campaign, but after complaining about game time, chances were given to him. That was his 6th of the season, and he'd get his 7th later on as Markello found a bunch of space, and his shot went off the post straight to Rashan. I don't know where this performance came from, but it's what the fans needed. With the second leg days later, an incredible cross for another Rashan goal, and a neat pass to Stalkers increased the aggregate lead to 4-0. Twente had no chance. Is what would be the case if the backline wasn't completely dismantled prior to this match. John Boy and Nauber were both suspended because yellow card accumulation still counted. Plus, Ayub Aydin was injured and out for the season. So despite these 3 never playing with each other as a trio and the lead dropping to 1, the Eagles survived and advanced to the final. They'd meet with Vitesse, who dealt with Utrecht comfortably. The positive was the first leg was at home, and everyone except Aydin returned. The bad news was that Capado has been crap for the last month and was benched for Stalkers for these fixtures. Although, that proved to be a blessing, as he'd win a penalty in the 24th minute. Another problem, Romans was stepping up to take it. Despite his history, he slaughtered it. Now, Vidovic was causing the team problems, but he was not in the right environment to succeed. To be fair, the Chelsea Loan Academy were unlucky to be down. As the clock kept ticking, desperate attempts were made to find an equalizer. That led to gaps behind your defense, with chances arriving. It seemed like those would come in vain, but instead of wasting time on a corner, it was delivered to the far post, where Kozłowski stupidly handled the ball, giving Romans another chance to be the hero. And he did just that. A 2-0 advantage going into Vitesse's yard still wasn't a foregone conclusion. We get it back, Fernandez. Romans. Adekanye! It seemed like the most unlikeliest players had been heroes at the most important time. Vitesse would grab one late in the half, but ensuing that 15-minute break, the boy John would seal Go Ahead Eagles' fate into the Conference League qualifiers. Nothing in response from the opponent, as Kroeman has done the unthinkable with a side who only wanted to avoid relegation. I'm sure he actually surprised himself, as Go Ahead Eagles are going on a European tour. This save is now available on my Patreon. Whether you want to continue this, however it ends, an older story, or just want to show some extra love, the options are available. The link is in the description, or go to patreon.com/Chroo. Obviously, if you can't add any more expenses, leaving a like and subscribing would also help me out. Albert Schallen is a cousin to every Football Manager player's nightmare.
No, it's true.
Not as menacing as Erling, but with both having a similar youth path, scoring a lot of goals for Berna and moving to Molde, the next step in their careers were crucial. Holland, of course, went to RB Salzburg, and the rest was history. Schallen signed for Go Ahead Eagles for 200k, just to get loaned back to Norway. Don't worry, we'll hear more from Schallen later in the video.
Very good.
In Kroeman's first season with Go Ahead Eagles, he somehow qualified for Europe. The caveat is that the team begins their adventure in Conference League second round qualifying at the end of July. So while the big boys got to go to Ibiza and only had to play friendlies, this side basically had 1 month off from a grueling campaign and had to go again with a group of players weaker than last year. Fontaine went back to Celta Vigo, and top scorer Capado refused to join the club permanently. It seemed like former Bayern players didn't enjoy commitment, as Ayub Aydin also left and joined Spurs on a free transfer. It wasn't looking good for Kroeman, especially with Del Rio rejecting an initial offer. It took a lot of convincing for him to sign the contract. but for a fee of 475k, Del Rio remained. Angelo Bruckner also stayed, going against his former teammates. Before the qualifiers, a couple free center backs arrived from released English clubs. Billy Koumetio from Liverpool, and the ever so pacey Malachi Fagan Walcott from Spurs. A goal scorer was still needed, and Crewman found one with Eredivisie experience. Manfred Ugalde, who was on loan at Twente last season, arrived from Lommel SK for 1.4 million. A bit of a risk, but hopefully his scoring tally of 6 could be improved on. If the Conference League qualifiers were anything to go off, then maybe a goldmine was smacked. The club entered the competition in the second round, and the opponent was FC Dinamo Otto Tiraspol of Moldova. Each round is a two-legged fixture, and if you lose, no European football. In Ugalde's debut, he scored a hat-trick in the first 19 minutes. A dream debut, which led to a 4-2 victory. Eventually, a 7-3 win on aggregate. The next round looked to be more of a challenge. The club drew Lugano of Switzerland, who finished in third, ahead of Basel. They had guys like Lars Lucas Mai, but goalkeeping wasn't their strong suit. While they did equalize, Lindhorst took the lead back, and returning Lucas Capado extended the lead. Yes, he decided to come back on loan. The fee was cheap, so it was worth it. The second leg was nerve-wracking for Go Ahead, as Lugano at home were able to score twice before the half thanks to Mohamed Amoura. However, there was no stopping the old man John Boy, whose physicals did not completely diminish yet as he scored 2 off corners. There was one more set of fixtures to get through in order for this team to compete in the prestigious Conference League.
What are you doing here?
Somehow, they finished behind recently promoted Casa Pia, which meant players who could compete with the very best of the Eredivisie would be Crewman's obstacle. Despite the quality of the opposition, it was Braga who looked inferior. That's because they should have been losing with all these chances. Instead, they scored off a corner 10 minutes prior to halftime. Go Ahead responded exceptionally, equalizing right after with Ugalde cleaning this mess. Braga were hanging by a thread before everything would collapse in their yard. Braga then scored 3 completely against the run of play. How? What? Despite great chances arriving for Go Ahead, Braga somehow escaped with a 4-1 victory despite the Eagles' XG being at 4.16. In the home fixture, Del Rio was able to score a brace. With the last quarter of the match remaining, only this Del Rio chance came, and it'd be Braga going to the Conference League, where they lost to AZ Alkmaar in the round of 16. So with no Europe and a squad with potentially too many players, Crewman decided to bring in 2 more midfielders for less than 500k combined. Basse Ngom from Senegal and Jobert from Brazil. He also sold 2 useless wingers for nearly $1 million combined. With the extra hard work in preseason resulting in no European football, you couldn't blame the squad for being in 17th place 8 match days in. Okay, maybe you can, but AZ, Feyenoord, and PSV are tough fixtures, and Twente started the campaign on fire. The club even made a 3-goal comeback against Utrecht thanks to an Ugalde hat-trick. However, with newly promoted Almere City giving us a tough time, confidence wasn't going to improve when nobody scored against Volendam. With a trip to the Johan Cruyff Arena next, that confidence wasn't high. Ajax were relatively dominant last year, but were somewhat struggling despite having the same exact team. With a heavy loss to PSG just days prior, they may not have been in the best headspace. All their shots were vapid, and after the 15-minute break, Go Ahead completely caught them off guard as Ugalde broke free and took the lead. Sadly, nice things didn't last long, as after this ball hit the flag and stayed in, Ajax will go on and win a penalty. That equalized the match, but it'd be the only way they would find the net, as it ended 1-0. A great result which brought confidence back to the side.
We are a threat. We are going to be able to mount a title challenge.
It also helped that they had a weaker bunch of games upcoming. 17th place Excelsior were defeated with a lone goal by Adekanye. Bottom of the table Villeneuve were easily handled by Del Rio, another Adekanye strike, and a brace from Capado. Both won without Mulder, the starting keeper. Although that may have been a problem versus now 17th place NAC. Stekelenburg was at the club, but his reflexes had him react to shots like 8 seconds late. So 201cm tall Tim Spigerman, who was 23 years younger than his counterpart, was tossed in. There wasn't much he could do on the opponent's first strike because nobody decided to press Usama Tanane, but Crewman blamed him for the second.
You think you're ready, you're not ready.
I personally would have been pissed off at Capado earlier on in the play. He should have made a pass to Adekanye, but his fraudulence was covered up by a goal that had no impact on the result. In December, a Del Rio brace arrived versus Vitesse, followed by a disappointing home draw to FC Eindhoven. Sparta Rotterdam following saw Ugalde score in the first minute, leading to a go-ahead clean sheet. finally, Groningen saw the real Lucas Capado as he earned himself a hat-trick. Ajax then would unfortunately defeat Kroemen's men in the Dutch Cup second round, bringing that chapter to yet another quick finish. While the table wasn't even on matches, after 17 of them, Go Ahead still had the possibility for European football, sitting only 4 points behind PSV. In Football Manager, a nasty injury can potentially derail a season. Go Ahead Eagles saw Bas Kuipers get a damaged Achilles tendon, taking out the starting left back for the remainder of the campaign. That left inexperienced players to cover, and in reality, they're not good enough to be starting. So the coach searched for a replacement and found a player. Let's introduce to you Project 64, turning Super Mario Dorgelis from a midfielder into a wingback. It was a cheap loan due to his wages, and the buy option was at 1.4 million. Now, he would have a hard time adapting to the position as he was dropping stinker after stinker, but by the end, he'd figure it out. Although, it may have been pretty naive to throw him into the gauntlet of hell. Ajax, Feyenoord, and PSV back to back to back. Kroemen thought he was having a nightmare when he first saw it, but it was the reality. Before that all began, Volendam showed a glimpse to the future. 2 conceded off corners, and this mess of a goal all happened within 35 minutes. Dario could only score 1, so lost to start out the new year, and absolutely no momentum walking into the Handschuhen van de Hel. It started with Joachim Löw's Ajax at home, which saw Dario score in the 4th minute. It seemed all good until seconds prior to the half, where Ngom seemingly gets shot in the middle of the pitch, and Ajax are off to the races. Kenneth Taylor found Tony Martinez in behind, who tuck home the equalizer. 15 minutes after the interval, Super Mario's lack of understanding at wingback showed, as his pressing decision led to Berghuis having all this space to find the lead. Some subs were made, including Romans coming on to receive a pass from Adekanye for a 68th minute equalizer.
1 minute later,
Ajax took the lead. Tony Martinez would immediately find another for his hat-trick, which all came after an incredible amount of passes from the Amsterdam club. Nothing in response, as Ajax would go on and win the Eredivisie once again. Feyenoord, managed by Jan Dahl Tomasson, seemed tight for a while. Although with them selling Chroo to Porto, they were able to invest in good players such as Emil Forsberg, Matthias Norman, and bloody Donny van de Beek.
Oh, piss off! Dude, what you do? He's bringing Donny van de Beek on.
Let's just say they invested well because the match ended 4-0. Nothing to see here. Well, the team drew PSV earlier in the campaign away from home, so surely they could do at least that at home. It wasn't looking that way though, with the chances PSV were missing. However, they would find a way to get the opener in the second half with this initial header finding another head. Go Ahead's response was as pathetic as Kroemen's suit, with the score remaining the same. Those results dropped Go Ahead into 12th, 15 points behind 5th.
He fell off. He really did fall off.
So once again, the sole chance for European football was through the playoff. Unlike last season, it is now either 5th to 8th or 6th to 9th, depending on who wins the Dutch Cup. All thanks to an extra European spot given to the Eredivisie. The team kept frauding it up with a draw to Willem II rescued by Ugalde and a 0-0 draw to Vitesse only happening because Müller made 11 saves. Still, that's more drop points, even with the new centre back being signed at the end of January for 800k. The scoring department in this club struggled, and the Heerenveen match was a perfect example. Go Ahead Eagles won 4-2.
Oh, so nice.
With an own goal and 3 penalties. Yeah, I thought Kroemen might have bribed the referee, but is he that desperate? A 3-0 loss to FC Eindhoven may lead to that answer. The table looked pitiful, and outside of Dario, the goal scoring was underwhelming. Ugalde looked more and more like a fraud, especially when it was learned that he dreads playing in big matches. Capado was also a shadow of the man he used to be. So who could be the savior in this side? With title challengers FC Twente coming up, Kroemen thought, yeesh, fuck it, let's start the big Norwegian up front. A brace versus Twente led to a stunning victory, and the man from Norway would score again versus Utrecht. Unfortunately, they would equalize in the 51st, but not too long after, the ref was feeling a little harsh and sent off Luke Brouwers. Still, Utrecht were holding on until the 90th minute, where this was called, and VAR said, sure, that's a pen. Lucas Capado would score the game winner, giving another impressive win for Go Ahead. With the next 3 matches against teams getting threatened by relegation, you'd have to imagine those would all be wins. Things turned around in the second after changing the mentality to attacking. Super Mario was able to find not just Adekanye, but our guy Shalan to equalize the match. Sadly, Dario missed a few good chances in the half, which cost Go Ahead a victory. NAC had a similar story. They scored first, Mulder! Schalland equalized, but chances were wasted on more than one occasion. By the way, all these misses were in the first 20 minutes. It seems like I'm plagiarizing the script of Groundhog Day because versus Excelsior, a team that did get relegated, they scored first. An absolute banger to be fair, and Go Ahead had to retaliate once again. Off a throw-in, it'd be Idzis to equalize the score. He began to get minutes in defensive midfield, as his performances warranted it. Then, in the final few minutes of regular time, Adekanye found Roshan Fernandez in behind, who scored his first goal of the season to win the match. Schalland was quiet again, which was fine, but against Cambuur, he would pull his hamstring. This came at a bad time because Ugalde was only returning from a back strain and has been crap. Lucas Capado has also been crap, so Crewman decided to get his match sharpness up by playing him in a reserves friendly. He proceeded to break his leg, with Bayern immediately cancelling the loan. Returning to Cambuur, I've seen better defending in Sunday League. Idzis would make up for it by scoring one himself. Then, let me introduce to you Eredivisie goalkeepers. This time, it wasn't against Go Ahead. However, the bad defending returned for a Cambuur equalizer. They almost won it, but more points dropped. With Feyenoord winning the Dutch Cup, 9th place would be enough for a European playoff spot, which was conveniently the position Go Ahead Eagles were in. A victory versus Groningen actually raised the club into 8th, although with 11th place Heeren being 2 points behind and a match versus AZ Alkmaar next, it was going to be close. Never mind. Just like that, a red card and 2 Alkmaar goals sent the club from 8th to 11th with 1 match remaining. The good news was that the fixture was at home to Sparta Rotterdam, and Schalland was back. Still, even if Go Ahead win, it might not be enough. Nice. Go Ahead were able to respond with, of course, Schalland equalizing before the half ended. More goals were still needed, but in the following 45, Roshan had his chance tackled away, another one stopped, but nothing more. It didn't matter in the end, as Go Ahead would have needed to win by 4 to finish in 9th. Was Crewman a one-season wonder? Was he a Fontaine merchant who couldn't set up a defense properly? Probably, but with the board giving him a new contract right before the new year, he's there to stay, and he's established Go Ahead as an Eredivisie side. There's a lot more questions than answers at the moment with barely anyone standing out in the team, but will Crewman blame himself? No. But he did sack the fitness coach. Maximiliano Romero was once a promising footballer and a fantastic wonder kid on Football Manager. As for back as FM16, you could get the then 16-year-old from Velez for a 1.1 million compensation fee. He'd be able to develop into a world-class player, and that promise reflected into reality. Despite suffering a knee cruciate ligament injury in 2015, he was able to recover, make his debut for Velez, and score on his second appearance. By late 2017, PSV Eindhoven would buy him for 10.5 million euros, but minutes were sporadic. After a loan to Velez in 2019 and 2020, he'd return to his parent club. Sadly, in September of 2020, he would get yet another knee injury that sidelined him for almost a year. That campaign had to make a single appearance in the league that lasted for a minute. Some loans in Argentina followed, and in our universe, one appearance in the 2023-24 campaign for PSV.
That's a lot of damage.
When that concluded, his contract was up, and the future was outside of Eindhoven. Willem II gave him a contract offer to play in the 2nd division. Then Crewman offered more money, and he joined Go Ahead Eagles. Rebounding from second season syndrome was key for Go Ahead. Finishing 10th place was respectable, but after nearly having a taste of European football, that would be the goal for this upcoming season. With the introduction of Romero and free agent transfer of Kelechi and Vakali, Crewman opted to finally use his preferred 3-4-1-2 tactic. Getting a cam was crucial, and ever since Crewman watched a YouTube video about Nigeria's trio from the 2015 U17 World Cup, he felt honored to have that tournament's MVP. Yet, things weren't clicking. Romero was struggling, and the defense was being leaky, even with free transfers of center back Jete from Ablachete and goalkeeper Patrick Colgren from Randers. Super Mario Dorgeles also returned to continue learning his trade at left wing back. With only 1 clean sheet in the first 5 matches, added with Feyenoord, PSV, and Ajax in the following 5 fixtures, it wasn't looking promising. Did Crewman keep Mulder as a backup keeper? No. He didn't sign one, and had to use Spikerman for these games.
I would suggest you don't know anything about anything.
Quite the baptism of fire, if I do say so myself. First up is Feyenoord, the club who finished in 3rd last season and were Europa League semi-finalists, eliminated by Tottenham due to an 80th minute Bentancur goal, where they lost the final to Everton.
Tottenham story is this.
Now returning to the fixture with Go Ahead, Spikerman wasn't going to have an easy time if Emil Forsberg was going to do this. The defending was also out of sorts for their second. However, the shortest man in the opponent's box, Manfred Ugalde, was found to bring one back with a half hour to go. Then, about 10 minutes later, Ngom was tripped up as he entered the box. The ref pointed to the spot, and Romans was up to take it.
It's the history of the
Romans.
At least he made it up to salvage the draw versus Utrecht, but he can score that? But not this? Van Nistelrooy and PSV were next. Romero's former club. And Adekanya was there once. Crewman decided to revert to the winger version of the tactic to see if it could make a difference. It didn't. Adekanya messed up a big chance soon after, but in the second half, Del Rio would find Romero in behind, and despite not enjoying big matches, he scored against his former club. That was also his first of the season. Was it finally a turning point for Go Ahead Eagles? No. PSV scored 3 goals in response, handing Crewman a 4-1 L. The team actually showed some confidence against Emmen, but it took an 85th minute strike from Schallen in order to achieve a 1-0 victory. Wow, a clean sheet. Enjoy it, because Ajax was next. Last year's Eredivisie winners, their manager Joachim Löw was insulted by the league's new rule of having to sanitize before shaking the opponent's hand, so he left for the Belgium national team, where sanitation is not needed.
Whoa, 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 hey, 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 hey!
Ajax in response got another German international coach, this time the man who led Turkey to a Euro 2024 final, Stefan Kuntz. No, I'm saying Kuntz. No, Kuntz. Kuntz. Unfortunately, they lost to England, but his reputation was high, and Ajax went all in. In the match itself, despite Romero scoring a penalty, Ajax completely destroyed Go Ahead. A Berghuis header, a Kumetio mistake leading to a Tony Martinez finish, Davy Klaassen getting a third, and Bloody Harry Maguire scoring a penalty to absolutely insult Crewman. 10 match days played, and Go Ahead Eagles were in 12th. It's clear to see that Crewman needed some tactical advice. So of course he would call yours truly any day now.
I may have been gone for a moment, but I have been cooking.
Realizing that several of the instructions made zero sense, Crewman changed a few things, like pressing higher up the pitch. He also slightly changed the tactic to a 3-4-2-1, with a pressing forward up top, along with a shadow striker and an attacking midfielder in support. Okay, yes, it does look like a Christmas tree, but the results improved significantly. For the remainder of 2024, Go Ahead were undefeated in 7 Eredivisie matches and 2 Dutch Cup fixtures. The attackers were beginning to do their job, whether it was Schallen or Romero, and Vicali and Del Rio were beginning to cook too. Plus, the defense actually kept clean sheets, 6 to be exact, and the only blemish was a 1-1 draw away at Twente, who were very good in this adventure. Then, with Crewman finally defeating Cambuur with goals from Fagan Walcott and Schallen, Go Ahead rose up to 5th place, only 4 points behind 2nd. Still far back behind Ajax, but with them at home in the first Eredivisie match of the new year, it was the perfect time to use this tactic. After getting thumped by Ajax, Go Ahead rebounded well. A lone Invakali goal versus FC Emmen was nice. The absolute destruction of Heerenveen was even nicer. A 5-0 victory, which included a Romero brace. The 3-4-2-1 era of Go Ahead was looking great, but it was never going to be perfect. Despite Schallen scoring in both fixtures, 2 away losses arrived with Groningen and Vitesse. Sometimes you're not at your best, especially in away games. A Valvik home win in between at least didn't make the first half of March a disaster. Unfortunately, the team still dropped into 6th, outside the official European places. However, the following 4 fixtures would determine whether Go Ahead were for real. Twente and PSV at home, followed by Utrecht and Feyenoord away. Being realistic, Crewman thought 7 points would keep them in the race. It wasn't going to be easy, but life never is for a guy who decided to wear this ridiculous suit. One day we're becoming a mainstay with the elite, but after a 2nd place finish, their manager Ron Jans retired. Beijing manager Stanley Menzo took over. The former Ajax keeper continued where the former left off. However, Go Ahead was looking like the better team, all squared at the interval, but immediately following, Del Rio was able to find Lindhorst for the lead. With only 2 shots in the match, it would take something special for Twente to get back into it. The lead would come back with an Idzes header delivered by Scott Guest, a man bought for 2.5k from Scotland. While he hasn't really developed since arriving, the 5'2" man who was bald at 19 would also find Ugalde to make it 3-1, 3 points gained. And now, it was PSV next. With them right above in the table, the result with Van Nistelrooy's side could determine so much. A terrible start 8 minutes in, but luck would be with go ahead just after half an hour. A failed clearance was swept up by Romero, scoring once again versus his former team. Then at the start of the second, Del Rio delivered a corner to the back post where Fag and Walcott scored a header to give go ahead the lead. That excitement increased as 6 minutes following, Lindhorst found Invicoli in rooms of space and he increased the lead. PSV were down and out as in added time, Del Rio scored not just one, but 2 finishes to completely humiliate them and level the club on points, only behind on goal difference. 6 of the 7 desired points were already achieved, and with a 2-0 lead late versus Utrecht, everything seemed perfect for go-ahead. Too perfect. That's because Utrecht weren't bad, and Alan Medina got one back in the 86th. The substitutions prior didn't really help the defense or match the intensity of those replaced. That led to Medina finding acres of space to equalize in the 92nd minute. Despite it not being a bad draw, the context makes it suck. Still, the 7 points were achieved, so anything against Feyenoord would be fantastic. They beat Go Ahead in the Dutch Cup a month prior. On to the task at hand, it was a similarly close match. Van de Beek's shot was the best in the first half, but after the break, a corner kick arrived for the away team. Crewman saw this as the perfect opportunity for his corner kick routine. Del Rio with the corner. Back post to Lindhorst. Up to the top of the box to Kuipers. Kuipers now goes wide. And Jete heads it in. Feyenoord weren't having the best day in front of the net, but their pressure would be rewarded in the last 10 minutes. Thanks to Kuipers just missing the ball. Also, it sure as hell didn't look onside. Unless if you look at it in 2D, which the VAR room must have done. So maybe that's why there's so many bad VAR calls. Despite the annoyance, it's a good draw. The team remained in 6th, but still within an arm's reach of a European place. With Go Ahead Eagles defeating Sparta Rotterdam 1-0 thanks to a Schallen goal, and PSV losing to Twente 1-0, Go Ahead hopped into 5th, 1 point behind AZ. They were the next opponents. In front of the home crowd, Go Ahead began with a Schallen half volley. An incredible ball by Del Rio temporarily put the Eagles into 4th. The match went by with not a lot happening from AZ, although that changed about 50 minutes into the second half. Dominguez got past the defenders and chipped Patrick Colgren. The game stayed tight and the scoreline would remain. Points shared. And no change in the table, with PSV also dropping points to Vitesse. 5 matches remain, and the 3 clubs competing for 4th all had simple games on paper. Go Ahead had FC Eindhoven, and it was simple for them, going 3-0 up within half an hour. Don't worry, Del Rio would find his brace, Schallen his hat-trick, and Invicoli adding 1-2, winning 6-3. AZ also won, but PSV drew FC Volendam. The club Crewman's men faced next. The thought was that PSV were in bad form. The reality is that Volendam were catching their opponents by surprise. An Invicoli goal was not enough, as 3 massive points were dropped. The good news was that PSV were actually crap, as they lost to PEC Zwolle. The bad news was that AZ won, and now had a 4-point advantage. Now normally, there would be 5 European places before the playoff. However, in the Dutch Cup semi-final, Feyenoord lost to Groningen, while Ajax lost to Emmen. Those winners finished outside the top 9, meaning they couldn't qualify for European football through the league. On the other hand, the winner of the Dutch Cup automatically qualifies for the Europa League proper instead of 4th. That means the final European spot outside of the playoff goes to 4th place. All Go Ahead could worry about was winning their final 3 games and hope things elsewhere would work out. SC Cambuur away was first. This was relatively simple, with Maximiliano Romero scoring in the 2nd minute and the backline keeping things safe for the rest of the fixture. PSV drawing Heerenveen made them irrelevant in this discussion, and AZ versus Eindhoven saw all blanks. A boost for 4th, with 2 points being the gap. AZ needed to draw at least one of their last 2 fixtures, but it wasn't going to be against Cambuur. Go Ahead, on the other hand, had to face their fierce but worse at football rivals PEC Zwolle. Today is not the day to talk about the newly promoted side and the derby history between the 2 clubs, but what will be mentioned is the lone goal scored by Invicoli. The strike prior to the half was enough to keep up. So, it was time for the final day of the season. Go Ahead had Almere City at home, who were already relegated, while AZ were visited by Heerenveen. But could they help Crewman out? Well, Go Ahead couldn't worry about that, as Almere were being difficult to break down. And when they were, Romero missed this chance. The team was getting close, and in the 64th minute, Ugalde secured a 2-0 victory, while in Alkmaar, Mariane's finish gave Heerenveen the win and sent Go Ahead Eagles to Europe. Maybe Europa Conference League third round qualifying thanks to Ajax and Feyenoord fumbling the Dutch Cup, but an astounding achievement for Crewman. While in the European playoff, Heerenveen would also defeat PSV, kicking them out of Europe for the first time since 2017. Van Nistelrooy was sacked, and all was right in the world. Unfortunately for Heerenveen, all the dramatics led to absolutely nothing as AZ beat them in the final. This guy has been incredible over the last 2 seasons. Just for the Eredivisie, he had 19 goals and 16 assists. However, when he was brought on a permanent contract for 475k, a promise was made. Within 2 campaigns, Europa League football had to be achieved. Last year's finish would normally have given that, but thanks to some Dutch Cup shenanigans, Go Ahead Eagles were in third round Conference League qualifying. Dario was enraged. Having less than 2 years left on his deal, selling him for his value was the only option. It wouldn't be hard to find a suitor, but it's a little disheartening that he went to Serie B side Salento.
What are you doing? That's my name.
A deal that can rise up to 7 million, but Dario's anger was impacting the Conference League qualifiers. Crewman's men had to face Baník Ostrava. The winner had to face Fenerbahce or a team from Kazakhstan, so the next step was going to be a challenge. However, Crewman wasn't thinking about the task at hand, as in the 26th minute, Ivan Schranz opened the scoring at the soon-to-be expanded De Adelaar Shorst. Despite dominating the match with chances, there was nothing coming from Go Ahead, who went into the second leg down by 1. The side did feature some new signings. Starting was Dubinchak, a left back from Dynamo Kiev acquired on a free. On the bench, Vinicius Souza appeared. He also came in for free. That was basically it. Crewman tried to sign a center back, but every single defender was rejecting him. Do they really hate his suit that much? Ramon Hendricks didn't, as he was the only one to come in thus far, although he was just a backup. Still, Go Ahead should be winning this tie, and away from home, the aggregate will be equalized by Schallen. A solid first half, a crossbar hit in the second. What could go wrong? Red card? This penalty would put them up in the tie, but Karlgren saved it. Padding was still across Crewman's face, but the club survived 65 more minutes, leading to a penalty shootout. Everything was going to plan until Schallen hit the post. Thankfully, Sané would be stopped by Karlgren. As sudden death approached, it's crazy that a single idiotic mistake led to this point. But as Mario Dorgeles stepped up, oh my gosh. So no European football again. Crewman was starting to become a meme in the Netherlands, so his side needed to automatically qualify for Europe. Wins versus Volendam and Willem II was a nice change of pace compared to previous seasons. Against Ajax away from home, things were looking fantastic as Maximiliano Romero started things off with a 24th minute goal. Now for some reason, Ajax signed a different Maximiliano. Gomez was theirs, and he equalized. I say for some reason because Tony Martinez scored 34 last campaign, and they refused to sell him despite getting a nearly £50 million bid. Go Ahead were looking like the better side, but Ajax would grow into the match, and Edson Alvarez would take the lead off a corner. Changes were going to be made, until a chance came up in the 92nd minute. And gone.
Yeah! I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again!
A satisfying draw away to the champions of the last 7 years. Soon after came the arrival of Zach Aw from Arsenal on loan.
Say ah.
And with his contract expiring at the end of the campaign, maybe he would actually join on a free. The draw versus Ajax was an incredible moment, but it did stop the winning. Despite playing well, a 0-0 versus Heerenveen arrived. At home versus Twente, victories looked to be back on the menu as Ugolde scored within the first minute. Twente, though, responded with a nice goal. Adam Armstrong! Then after a few questionable decisions, Czerny decided he was Arjen Robben and took the lead for Twente. 2 great goals, but where did that come from? Schallen had a great opportunity to equalize, but he messed it up as Go Ahead somehow lost this game. Wins followed versus Eindhoven and Excelsior, but with 4 straight away games in the league, the victories didn't last long. Despite playing better, Utrecht ended in a draw. Feyenoord was a 0-0 draw, where this time, Go Ahead were lucky. PSV with now Peter Bosz as coach were having a rough time, except against Crewman, where they deservedly won 2-1. The final away match versus Vitesse was much better, with Vinicius Souza scoring in the 72nd to give a 1-0 dub to go ahead. 11 games in, and even with having to face most of the difficult teams away from home, they were in 5th, just 6 points behind first place. With all these matches coming up, this was a great time to cement a European place for go ahead. Sparta Rotterdam saw Envekali take the lead in the 58th minute. Crewman's men didn't play well, but they were holding on.
I am a little bit in shock.
A 1-1 draw where they had no shots on target. Okay, well, Nat Breda were struggling this season, and it showed. Ngom and Jete both contributed to take a 2-0 lead in the first 14. In spite of Omarson catching the backline off guard in the 60th, there was no way Go Ahead were going to bottle this. Okay, what the crap is going on?
Oh my god!
Not ideal. That led to Crewman calling up one of the super Belgian troops, Sam Jonkere. He arrived around a year and a half ago with several other players from Belgium. Who knew there were some decent players available in the 2nd and 3rd Belgian divisions? They all had decent potential and at worst, alright resale value. Sam would make his first 11 debut versus local rivals Pek Zwolle, where it ended in a 0-0 draw. I still refuse to talk about you. Following them were AZ. They were struggling a bit this year as they had already sacked manager Jagoba Arasate. Their attempt to hire Crewman 7 days before this fixture failed. Instead, they got Jan de Jonge and their side looked terrible. Prior to halftime, they would concede a penalty and Ugalde tucked it home. Unfortunately, chances were still being squandered and 15 minutes after the break, Rune Larsen turned their defense and finished a nice shot. Now with all 5 subs being made, surely FM wouldn't have one of Crewman's players get injured. Despite being the better team, nothing separated the two clubs for yet another draw. However, it looked like Groningen at home was finally going to end this drawing streak. A Schallen goal was separating the two, but in the 89th minute, how the hell does that just happen? In the final match of 2026, Emmen were the opponents, and surely this wouldn't end in a draw. Crewman was going to lose his mind, but somehow, the boys were playing great. Envekali in the 19th, and a penalty won, leading to an Ngom goal. The players were going to get tired, but surely this time, they could hold on. Another one. Well, it's Christmas now, so I got the perfect gift for Crewman. 6 draws in a row was painful, so a signing was needed. One would finally replace Del Rio. His name was Guus Til. Available on a free in 6 months, he agreed a contract, and PSV allowed him to join straight away for only 475k. The problem was that he barely played football in the last 2 years, so the man could barely play a half without passing out. He didn't really help in the first 2 matches, where the club drew 0-0 in both. So now they can defend. The team was drawing so much in such spectacular fashion that they hung this up at the Louvre. It still needed to be updated though, as even in the Dutch Cup, the club drew. Sparta Rotterdam were the opponents, and 5'2" Scott Guest was sent off in the 34th minute. The battle went to extra time where Remco Balk would take advantage of a silly mistake and terrible goalkeeping. Thankfully, Super Mario equalized and the Eagles won in penalties. At this point, the cup may be the best chance for Europe, as against FC Volendam, Go Ahead drew again. Volendam's goals? Well, Aziz first scored this, and then this, which had Karlgren being questioned for match fixing. And Ngom also got a red card. 9 draws in a row led to Go Ahead being placed in 10th. Despite the fraudulence, they weren't far off of Europe.
I think we ain't done yet.
Some signings and sales were needed. Get Ugalde, Amofa, and Karlgren out of here. Just under 5 million received for them combined. Also, get Dubinchak out of here on loan. Adekanye also went out on loan. For Go Ahead, Benita from Feyenoord came in for a loan to back up Brugner. Then for goalkeeper, another loan. From RB Leipzig, former FM wonder kid, Martin van der Voort. The final transfer would be the biggest one so far. Philip Bungard of Randers FC. Or how the Danes say,
Philip Bungard.
He seems like he can develop into the perfect striker, but with the fee of 5 million up front, it was a huge risk. Although, in his debut versus Vitesse, he would score. And Envekali would help out too, scoring a brace to make things too difficult for the opponents. Finally, a win. Oh, they actually won a game before all these signings came in. Willem II was defeated 1-0 with a 79th minute Maxi Romero goal. Yeah, that was only his 4th of the season and was why a striker was necessary. Before the team could get ahead of themselves, they had to play PSV in the quarterfinals of the Dutch Cup. The drawing may have ended in the Eredivisie, but that wasn't the case here. No goals in 120 minutes meant another penalty shootout. In front of the home crowd, Van der Voort would stop the first pen. Romero scored his, along with Jay Simmons and Ngom. Luke de Jong would have his saved as well. With Schallen giving a 3-1 lead, go-ahead Eagles needed just one more goal or a PSV miss. That didn't arrive as Babad succeeded while Van der Voort did a bit of a jive. Nevertheless, Mvakali was stepping up to send go-ahead to the semi-finals. Oh no. A terrible gut feeling came across Chroo, but he couldn't go to the bathroom and saw Teze score. Vinicius Souza, who converted a pen this season, was next. Vinicius. No! Nobody would miss until the goalkeeper stepped up. It shouldn't have, but Van der Voort turned into Arsenal Peter Cech, just walking off the line as PSV calmly tucked their pens in. Schicks scored a perfect pen, while Van der Voort had his denied. An absolute bottle job by Go Ahead, but they were able to shake it off until the March international break. NAC Breda and Excelsior were defeated, while I will still continue not to talk about PEC Zwolle, as they drew Go Ahead 0-0 once again. A 2-2 draw versus Feyenoord afterwards was more respectable. Both sets of fans appreciate each other, and it was nice to see them dethrone Ajax to win the Eredivisie. It looks like it finally paid off for Donny van de Beek. Following that, Boongaard scored a brace versus FC Eindhoven in a 3-1 victory, and Go Ahead got their revenge over PSV with a 2-0 win at home. 28 match days in, and the club were back in a European place. With an international break putting a pause on the momentum, Ajax would be the first game upon the league's return. Despite struggling this season, they were able to add Thomas Lamar and Fabian Ruiz to their already great team, yet the score remained tied for a while. Goose still had a great opportunity after the restart, but it would be Tony Martinez beating Walcott in behind to open the scoring. That small margin gave Ajax the victory. Post-international break syndrome was hitting the Eagles, as Sparta Rotterdam away brought on another loss. Heerenveen at home was also extremely irritating. They had 2 goals in the first 4 minutes. Boongaard and Mvakali were able to salvage a draw, but what the hell was happening? Twente away was a wild game too. Goose Till was able to open the scoring to have a lead at the half. However, after a terrible Boongaard miss, Gijs Small smashed in a free kick. They almost won it in the 65th and 84th, but the score remained the same by the end. With 2 fixtures left, the club were in 6th, 2 points behind 5th. Wait a minute, who won the Dutch Cup? Despite winning the last 2 matches, including scoring 8 against AZ, that's what you get, you bozos, Go Ahead Eagles finished in 5th place and were once again screwed by the Dutch Cup. They severely underperformed their XG, while AZ overperformed by 16 points. The Eagles also broke a club record for most draws in a season with 17. The league record is 18, but there's no way they could break that. The club had to enter the European playoff, where 5th to 8th play in a 4-team, 2-legged knockout tournament. So Crewmen had to face Groningen, who they just beat.
Nope.
Right. There's a reason we're here. Heerenveen helped us a bunch last season, but the opposite was the case this time. Regardless, the team was pounding them to the floor. Yet, it took until the 56th to break the deadlock. Wingback Benita would surprisingly be the one to do it. Brugner was injured, and so were several players. That includes the deep-lying playmakers like Lindhorst and Souza, along with Fagan Walcott. The good news was that Zach Aw was back. Even so, chance after chance came, yet the score stayed the same. Heerenveen were nowhere to be found, but in the 91st minute, a throw-in led to a cross, and on their second shot of the match, Van Beek somehow scored this header. 0.1 expected goals. With the second leg at home and how Go Ahead were playing, surely they could seal this. It took until the 71st minute, but a deserved lead was earned by oh, it was offside. Don't worry. Mvakali would score a minute later. It took a lot more work than anticipated, but Crewman learned his lesson. Instead of staying on positive, he would park the bus to seal the a highlight in the 90th minute? What a shitty pass! What the hell was that? No! What? Not again. Penalty after penalty were being scored. But surely FM wouldn't be so cruel. Mangraviti now, our center back. Why? Don't do this. Wow. Crewman has bottled European football 3 times now. With 1 year left on his contract and the lack of progress of qualifying for Europe, this next season is make it or break it. Oh, and one more thing. Since those 2 Heerenveen matches technically ended in draws after 90 minutes, Go Ahead Eagles set a league record for most draws in a season. So who else better to come in than Jude Bellingham?
No, this is a joke.
Okay, that was a bit of a pipe dream as he went to PSG, but he did recommend his brother Joe. Obviously not as good. However, like his sibling, he decided to move abroad to develop further. Now, since it is the final year of Crewman's contract, if he doesn't finish in the top 3, he'll leave. That's the position he was supposed to finish in last year, so with no European football, again, let's see what he did with the squad.
Please, why can't we just forget all about it?
That really wasn't fun.
Come on, give me a break. I'm new in this country.
Oh, man. I had enough of this.
The sales would raise around £9 million, which led to these transfers. The new ball-playing center-back on cover is Paulo Gozzi. The former Juventus man who signed for $3 million was also once known as being the greatest goalkeeper in the world. To provide competition at right wing-back, Chroo was transferred from Osasuna after only playing 1 match for the Pamplona-based club. With Mangravidi gone, the left-sided center-back was filled by Cesar Haidar of Werder Bremen. A little pricey as the deal is worth up to $5.5 million. Goalkeeping-wise, with Van der Voort refusing to return, that position was filled in by Haydar's teammate, Kalle Julsen. Worth only $1.2 million, will this Swede have a better ending than the previous? To add depth to the midfield, Mohamed Kamara came from Radomiak of Poland. Quite an interesting career path so far, but the guy looks promising. The final player for now would be Jose Maria Guillo of Elche, a promising striker who would also see playing time from the shadow striker role.
We're all wondering how this is going to affect LeBron's legacy.
A lot of new players joined the team, but it was now the moment to test their worth on opening day. Sparta Rotterdam opened proceedings, and the first goal of the season will be finished by last year's January transfer of Philip Bungard. He soon won a penalty less than 10 minutes later, which saw Envakali double the lead. Bruckner joined in the fun, as he somehow scored from a tight angle, while Envakali's shot was too hot to handle for Sparta's keeper. All the work was done within the first 19. Unfortunately, Go Ahead Eagles were put into their place by last year's Eredivisie winners, Feyenoord. An early strike by Adel and a late one by Bustos doesn't need any more commentary than that. They also smoked Ajax 5-1 in their next fixture.
We didn't play well. Feyenoord played good.
Philip Bungard last campaign only got 5 goals and 15 appearances. It wasn't bad, but with a full preseason, the $5 million spent needed more output. Versus PSV away, the first strike was a perfect example of that. Philips Sport were on the verge of becoming a Finnish club. That's because Go Ahead would seal victory, as Goose Till would find Bungard again. He was starting the season well, finding the winner versus Pek Zwolle right after, and getting the Eagles' sole goal in a somewhat disappointing 1-1 draw to Groningen. He wasn't going to score in every game, as in a visit to Volendam, the score remained 0-0 for the longest time. A frustrating game that brought reminders of the last campaign. However, with some subs, Joel Bellingham was found, and he slotted the winner late on. FC Eindhoven next would soon learn about Bungard. The Dane contributed in a 3-1 victory, while against Emmen, a different hero was needed. Schalland would find the winner. The team who achieved Dutch Cup glory last season and ruined Go Ahead's shot at Europe were next. It was also now Adekanye's club, although he wasn't the one to worry about. Instead, it was Bertink who scored in the 3rd minute. Things got worse when for the 3rd time in a matter of months, 3 got injured. The right wing back position was cursed, as when both him and Bruckner were about to be fit, one of them got injured. Returning to the fixture, thankfully, Bungard would equalize, but the desperation for revenge increased, bringing more risk, and those would cost the side any points. Not sure how that went in, but it wasn't going to be the last painful thing to happen. Almere City afterwards provided that pain by getting an 82nd minute equalizer. Luckily, it would turn right around versus AZ Alkmaar. Mohamed Kamara's 3rd minute goal was added with a Maxi Romero pen prior to halftime. Jean-Philippe Mateta could only muster 1 as Go Ahead got back on track. Cambuur following was much simpler, with Bungard getting 2, aiding in a 3-0 win. 12 match days played, and the side were in 4th place, 4 points behind 1st and 6 above 5th. However, there was one club annoyingly keeping up with Go Ahead, and that was Heerenveen. Zakaria Marjan and Ezral Krasniqi were key so far. The first 45 was relatively quiet, but Crewman made the mistake of saying the team had a very good half. Minutes after the restart, Heerenveen would take the lead. The players will be berated and immediately miss a sitter. Still, the right ideas were back, as Bungard was found behind It's all good. This time, Boomgaard actually scored. Heerenveen would adjust, and nothing happened until the 88th minute, as Jobert wins the ball, a few passes are made until Invakali with loads of space finds Boomgaard behind, and he would win, go ahead, the match. A crucial 3 points. In the next month and a half, Go Ahead Eagles would have to face Ajax 3 times. Last year's runners-up have never been defeated by Chroo, but they had another manager shuffle. In the summer, the Belgian FA implemented some sanitization rules, seeing Joachim Löw leave and Stefan Kuntz take his place. Ajax's new boss, another former international manager who resigned after losing to Spain in the quarterfinals of the 2026 World Cup.
Sometimes may be good.
This first encounter against the Italian wasn't so memorable, as it ended in a 0-0 draw. However, Go Ahead would face them 13 days later in the Dutch Cup. During the lead-up, this came versus a really disappointing Utrecht side, and Twente, who once again hired a former Ajax player, Aaron Winter, although I remember him more for his Toronto FC days.
Good afternoon.
Nevertheless, Ajax in the second round of the Dutch Cup was a cruel draw by the KNVB, but the match began incredibly with Guus Til opening the scoring. A lead against them is never safe, but if they were to score, you'd hope they'd have to earn it rather than Gotzi messing Drolsen up with a more than savable shot. That was 10 minutes after the break, but not long after, Til would sacrifice his life by getting destroyed by Edson Alvarez, but the tackle turned into a perfectly placed pass to Boomgaard, who cleaned up Ajax's mess to go back ahead. Unfortunately, Ajax would have a counterattack about 20 minutes later, and no one decided to pick up old man Verratti, who lost any pace he had. Yet, he could still hit one from distance, as the Italian equalized the encounter. In spite of that, the fight was there for Go Ahead. Here we go, Jobert, Romero, to Invakali. Boomgaard! 3-2! Yes! A wild encounter saw the team finally defeat Ajax and advance to the next round. Chroo was about to make it 2 wins in a row in the fixture a month later. Go Ahead were up 2-0, and better yet, they had a man advantage for basically the last half hour. The lead up to this moment saw 2 wins in the Eredivisie, including a 5-0 thumping of Vitesse. A win versus Ajax would have the Eagles fly above into second place. However, a 73rd minute corner eventually found the corner taker himself, Lamar, all alone. And despite Jete's best effort, he could only deflect it in. Following a bunch of changes, like dropping the defensive line, Ajax were still able to run in behind easily as Lamar once again found space and equalized the affair. Well, that's a shame, but still solid not to lose to Ajax all season. Volendam were next in the Dutch Cup a few days later, so the side would have to be rotated. It featured a few debuts, including Bamba, who is a goalkeeper from Ivory Coast. He arrived last summer for 140k. The other debutant was Robel Germay of Norway, transferring from Brann for a combined 3.8 million deal. Fun fact, he was born in Eritrea. Worryingly, the rotated side saw Volendam hit the post in the last 10 minutes. Go Ahead would have an even better chance just before full time. Chances continued in the extra halves, as Boomgaard somehow hit the post from point-blank range. The wasted opportunity would cost them, as after a few weird moments, Klisner was found and Bamba rushed out, exposing most of the net. Til responded by hitting the post, and so would Boomgaard. All that work to defeat Ajax was just wasted. Julesen also got sick prior to that result, and he would miss the fixture versus Feyenoord. Still undefeated to this point, if things like this were going to happen, it will remain that way. However, Feyenoord's Mool would make a crucial error, with Boomgaard taking advantage of that. Alas, the bounces would go Feyenoord's way, as in the second half, the ball ended up on Van de Beek's foot, and he took the lead. Despite not really deserving to lose, all the points would go to the still undefeated team. 20 match days were played, and it was relatively tight between second, which was automatic Champions League, third, which was a playoff round of the Champions League, and fourth, which wouldn't be the Europa League proper because Sparta Rotterdam somehow won the Dutch Cup. The semi-finalists were all clubs that likely wouldn't qualify for Europe, so fourth's fate was known for a while. Before the fixture versus Heerenveen, Go Ahead would win versus Sparta Rotterdam 1-0 thanks to an Invakali banger. They would defeat Twente 2-0, keeping a 2-point gap between the clubs as they faced off. Good news early on, as the man who scored a brace versus Twente, Van Amersfoort, got injured. Heerenveen would have to adapt, but Chroo didn't, as Mario Dorgelis found the other wingback Brugner, and his first time pass found Job, who would score the lone goal.
Yes! That's what we work on in training.
Then, in the next 4 matches, Boomgaard would score 7. Cambour with James Tavernier were defeated 4-1. Following that, Utrecht unfortunately finished in a draw thanks to an early strike. However, they would have a shocking relegation. FC Eindhoven next was wild, being 2-2 at one point, but Boongaard's 69th minute goal, along with Evan Colley's 81st, gave a 4-2 victory. Finally, Boongaard's run saw 2 versus FC Emmen in a 4-1 triumph. Groningen away was then a pain to witness. Nothing basically happened for the entire 90. That was until late on, with subs already made, Schalem find Brugner, and his cross delivered once again as it found Jose Maria Guillo for the game-winning goal. That excitement teetered as Evan Colley's strike versus Almere City was cancelled out by Huh? So that was what Overmars was referring to. I thought he was just high, which is better than what he did at 6 fixtures left, and go-ahead Eagles were well in front of Heerenveen as they began to drop points left, right, and center. Ajax were just 2 points above, and with them drawing Feyenoord 0-0, Kroeman had the chance to match them on points if PSV could be defeated. The opponents have had a messy season, seeing another manager go to Gladbach, and unlike Peter Bosch, he had success by winning the Conference League, and this wasn't looking good for them. 10 minutes in, and Boongaard would take the lead. The scoreline remained tight for a while, but nothing would stop this Evan Colley strike from distance. He'd add to their misery with a penalty a few moments later. Even Schalem got involved as Christian Luna, who joined in the summer, found the Norwegian to give go-ahead an emphatic W. AZ away was tougher, with Jens Odgaard scoring in the 21st. They, like PSV, had manager changes. Jan de Jonge decided to leave to become Netherlands boss. After, they failed to even get an interview with Kroeman and hired Almere City manager Ricardo Moniz. He was sacked 6 months later, and AZ tried to go for Kroeman once again. He ignored them. So, they stole Rob Penders away from FC Eindhoven. Back to the encounter, it was getting late, with Boongaard having a bad night. So when in doubt, bring out Haaland. Sean's 2 goals gave a massive victory, but we can't ignore the winter signings of Lucas Havlik getting the assists on both. Already worth the 850k spent. 2 important wins had the team even on points with Ajax, just behind by a single goal difference. An opportunity to hop above them arrived as they drew PSV 1-1. Volendam was next for go-ahead, and the Eagles showed what should have happened in the Dutch Cup with an Evan Colley brace and Bellingham adding one himself. So, if the last 3 fixtures were won, go-ahead would finish in second, although there was no shot to catch Feyenoord at this point, as they were having a legendary campaign where they wouldn't lose a single match, finishing on 90 points. Into the final games, Peg Zwolle were handled easily. FC Twente, on the other hand, wasn't so simple. Go-ahead were getting many shots, but nothing was hitting the back of the net. Meanwhile, Ajax were scoring goal after goal versus Groningen, winning 6-1 and boosting their GD. Back at the Oudeloorshorst, Twente would keep possession without getting a single shot and kept the scoreline the same. So points were level, but Ajax hopped above on goal difference. That was the deciding moment due to them defeating Heerenveen on the final day with a first-minute finish, while go-ahead could only win by 2 versus Excelsior, ending up in 3rd. No need to be sour. It's their best campaign since probably the 30s, and was also the most points in the club's history. 3rd place would have them end up in the last round of the Champions League qualifying, so Europe was guaranteed, whether in the elite competition or the glorious Europa League. Now the real problem. These Dutch clubs are downright terrible in Europe, as the coefficient ain't looking good. This one fixture determines whether go-ahead Eagles are in the Champions League or Europa. Sparta Prague were the opponents, and the Czech First League runners-up were absolutely dismantled. Lucas Havlik in the 30th, and Vakali doubling the lead in the 66th, and Sean scoring a pen late on gave a 3-goal advantage. That's what their manager deserves for not following the dress code.
You know what you are? You're a clown.
The second leg provided more of a challenge, with Sagan bringing one back for them. However, Schalem and Havlik would score once again, securing Champions League football for Kroeman. Now, what kind of players would he be able to bring in for this European adventure?
Hi, welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?
Yeah, just a loan and a free transfer will do. Miguel Monsalve was loaned from Sporting, and he's there to fill in the attacking mid-roles, while the free was an Ajax player.
Oh, hey there.
Kian Fitzsium.
Keep scrolling.
He was signed for homegrown reasons because Kroeman barely had any Dutch players left. No one really left, except for Guillo on loan to Sparta Rotterdam, where he'd get some experience in the Europa League. The excitement of playing in Europe for the first time properly may have been distracting the team. From the first 9 matches, there was a home loss to Vitesse, a 0-0 draw to Twente, another 0-0 draw to Volendam, and a shocking 1-1 draw at home to NAC Breda. A rare bright spot though was versus Gattuso's Ajax.
Sometimes maybe
Now it's Fernando Torres' Ajax. which is random. I'm personally a big fan of El Nino, but as a manager, his previous roles were getting sacked by Cadiz and getting second with Strasbourg in Ligue 2. That resume spoke for itself, as Guus Til and Philippe Bungard scored against them in what was a fairly comfortable 2-0 victory. Then, matchday 9 versus Heerenveen could have been great. They were starting the campaign well, while a lot of the favorites weren't. Yet, our guy, Paulo Gozzi, headed this 75 seconds in. The Nigerian international has to have a good season, as he's now making 16K a week because of his international cap clause. And then he makes a mistake. Really, bro? It was alright, because our other Nigerian, Makali, had an incredible pass with his weak foot, leading to Guus Til's goal. Unfortunately, Gozzi would be caught out again and see Krasniqi equalize, resulting in a draw. Go Ahead were 7 points behind Heerenveen, as adapting to a European schedule proved to be challenging. Welcome to the world of the Champions League, where Gulf states have dominated the competition. The group stage format has been axed for 8-game league format, yet there were 3 Dutch clubs here to fix the country's coefficient. I feel like this is karma for bragging about getting an extra European spot those years ago. From September to January, Go Ahead had 8 matches to play in the Champions League, so let's go through all of them. Celtic at the Aldelar Shorst first, and the Glasgow club have won every Scottish Premiership in this adventure thus far. So, in their debut,
Banger! After banger!
Not an ideal start. Lyon away followed, and there's not much to talk about here. They've never been great in this save, have Wilfred Nancy as coach, and drew Go Ahead 0-0. 1 point going into the Real Madrid fixture isn't perfect. Even so, with Ancelotti still at the helm, they haven't won a European competition since the first season, although they have every single La Liga title. Despite that, a lot of key pieces have left, Endrick hasn't really developed, Marcos Leonardo was missing chances. Then, with the game at 52 minutes, a moment came no Go Ahead fan would forget. Camera, no way. Mohamed Kamara! Take a picture of that! Go Ahead Eagles 1-0 up on Madrid! They could only respond with wasted chances, as Go Ahead Eagles defeated Real Madrid in what has to be one of the most shocking results in the competition's history. If they can do that, imagine what will be done to Benfica. Those mistakes, terrible finishing, and a Mitrovic header gave Go Ahead a day to forget. Facing off with the better Prague side, Slavia.
What did you say?
Before Sparta fans get mad, I'm just stating facts. In the 17th minute, Almasi would get his own rebound to open the scoring. Guus Til equalized not long later, but the match remained level until the final 10, as off the bench, Schalland would find the winner. Despite the name, Borussia Dortmund have been anything but the second best team in Germany. They also didn't have the postman Guus Til. His first half strike was cancelled out by Andre Silva, but in the 79th minute, the postman delivered the 3 points. Would 10 points with a -2 goal difference be enough to finish in the top 24? I only ask, as Go Ahead had to face Arsenal and Inter in the final 2 matches. Arsenal at the time were first place in the Premier League and had Pep Guardiola as manager.
They don't have to be scared, we are neighbors.
He had a lot of the players you love, or hate, but they were added with Declan Rice, Aymeric Laporte, Manu Kone, Wilfred Gnonto, Richie the Regista, and Diogo Costa, despite Ramsdale still being there. They also had this Martin Perez kid who looks like an outstanding center back. With all that being said, Martinelli completely rinsed the team to find a wide open Jesus. We've mentioned Guus Til. However, in December, he would suffer a hip injury that would take him out for 3 months. That's where Lucas Havlik comes in to take his place. The Czech delivered against the Gunners, and the references to Pavel Nedved began to look uncanny. Arsenal were going to create more chances, but it was all about staying in the match and leaving the Emirates with a draw. The depth in this side was getting thin, as Fitzjim and Scott Guest were subbed on. Then, Pep started hearing music that he was once familiar with. Yes, Go Ahead Eagles took the lead at the Emirates and would keep it. Another massive victory, and that would guarantee a Champions League playoff spot with 1 match remaining.
You play Inter Milan Internazionale.
You like do? I didn't say.
Mauricio Pochettino's Inter was the final opponent. They were doing great in the competition so far, and would also claim the Scudetto. They'd also score in the 4th minute. Better yet, Go Ahead's Norwegian center back Germay would get sent off right before halftime. With hope basically lost, a few subs were made at the break and later on, as the win looked impossible. Inter weren't doing much though, and Schalland would earn a penalty just prior to the 90th minute. He'd equalize. but a highlight came from the kickoff. And then, oh, Monsalve finds Shalland. No way. I don't know how, but Inter were defeated by 10 men go-ahead, and the Eagles would finish in 8th place, meaning they advanced to the round of 16. Meanwhile, what happened in the Eredivisie? 9 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. Those victories included 2 massive ones over PSV, including a 5-2 thumping that was 5-0 at some stage. There was also a dramatic match versus Almere City, where at the time, they had 0 points, and had the score tied at 2. However, who else but Shalland to score in the 94th minute? The draws came from AZ, who now have Harry Maguire. He slaughtered home a pen to make it 2-0, but a pair of unlikely sources delivered, as Bruckner and Vinicius Souza made sure a point was earned. The other draw was a scoreless fixture at Vitesse. The sole loss came against Feyenoord right after that Benfica smashing. Boomgaard scored first, but Rangers equalized. And as I get deja vu typing this, before halftime, Tree got a straight red. Feyenoord would find a winner in the second to leave the Aldershorst with 3 points. So 21 match days through, and go-ahead Eagles were able to rebuild themselves into 2nd place. Yet, despite Feyenoord's struggles this season, they were back in 1st by 2. It's pretty impressive what they were doing, as they sold a few of their best players. Mario Gila to Madrid for 45 million, and Ibrahim Adel to Liverpool for a whopping 91 million pounds. That saw Luis Openda arrive from Stuttgart, Benjamin Thoresen Faras of Dortmund, Vinicius Tobias arriving from Shakhtar, and Viktor Shigenkov loaned in. Go Ahead would have a similar financial influx, as they would get a new owner. Okay, I was lying about similar as it wasn't a tycoon owner. Yuri Bloom bought the club for 62 million and gave an extra few million for transfers. So 2 loans came in.
Sorry, boys. That one's on me.
Those loans were Willy Kamwala at center back and Eamon Kari in the midfield. Both will provide depth. Conveniently, Feyenoord were the next Eredivisie match. Oh, and they loaned into Ketelerier. Not many clear chances were occurring, but Kroeman had a trick up his sleeve. Bring on Shalland in a big game, and Shalland scores. 87th minute, and the man delivered once again, putting Go Ahead Eagles into 1st. Following that up wouldn't be easy, but it had to be done if the club wanted to win the Dutch Cup, where they would face Fernando Torres' Ajax. That match would begin with some decent chances being missed. However, prior to the break, Edson Alvarez would be a little too clumsy in the box, as Pavlik won the team a penalty. Super Mario Dorgelis tucked it away, and Ajax would be down and out, with Monsalve extending the... oh, it's an own goal. Regardless, Ajax would make it nervy scoring this pile of trash, but it wouldn't be enough, as... Don't do this, FM. Oh, thanks for that. A deserved win which not only saw Go Ahead face Villeneuve in the semi-final, but it also saw the sacking of El Nino. Seems a little harsh, but you do you, Ajax. Some easier matches were coming up against Eindhoven, Groningen, Pek Zwolle, and NAC Breda. Except, they weren't easy, as 3 of them were draws. Obviously, Pek Zwolle was the sole win. Still won't talk about you. Following that, Ajax were up again, this time at the Johan Cruyff Arena. With former Cologne and Leipzig manager Stefan Baumgart now in charge, Kroeman was unfamiliar with his game, specifically the formation, and the clown's knowledge showed. This may be a big problem next year, but currently, the issue was the present, and that situation was 4 points behind Feyenoord. Things don't get easier with Arsenal in the Champions League. In the round of 16, Go Ahead Eagles would face Arsenal again, and it began like the previous encounter, Gabriel Jesus opening everything up. The pressure is still on them, and the side reacted well with the most precise of strikes. Mario Dorgelis smacked the ball off of Boomgaard's back, and it somehow rolled in. Then, just prior to the half, Big Willy Kamwala scored off a corner to match last fixture's scoreline. Yet, there was a half to play, and Uma Kali would regret this miss. In the 75th minute, Richie found Odegaard for the equalizer. 2-2 was a great score, but Kroeman was going for another, but that proved to be naive. With I swear 78 players in the box, the ref missed a clear pen, Arsenal countered, Hader somehow didn't intercept Nanto's pass, and this random pace merchant scored the winning goal. The Gunners may have won here, but the Adlershorst were waiting. And the wait was worth it, as Boomgaard within 25 minutes bagged a brace. That gave the advantage back to Go Ahead, but Pep was cooking something up at halftime.
Sit down! Nobody talk! Sit down!
Following that, they were ruthless, taking advantage of a Vinicius Souza error. If you thought defeating Arsenal was too good to be true, you were right, as Martinelli would add a brace for himself. Another 3-2 loss means that Arsenal advanced 6-4 on aggregate. A great first campaign, but there's still a chance at a trophy. The semi-final versus Willem II happened after the thumping by Ajax. They were a second division side, and while they were not providing any danger, Go Ahead struggled to find the back of the net. Thankfully, a penalty was won, with Sjælland tucking it home. But this was too close for comfort. The final would come against Twente, who defeated PSV and Heerenveen on their way here. Before that, there was a dress rehearsal in the Eredivisie, seeing Go Ahead win 2-1. A few more followed, and with Feyenoord dropping some games, the gap was now at 2. It was going down to the wire, but Crewman had to worry about making history in the Dutch Cup. Go Ahead Eagles have never won this competition, and only made the final all the way back in 1965, losing to an 88th minute goal from Frans Boomeister, handing Feyenoord the trophy. Twente, on the other hand, last lifted the trophy in 2011 versus Ajax after extra time. With their short stint as a strong Eredivisie club coming to a close, they wouldn't want to let this era end without a trophy. 51,177 fans at the Kuip witnessed the final, but who would be the victors? It started with Go Ahead, but Boongaard hit the post. Twente were having a slow start, with them struggling to clear this out. Go Ahead had been better, and in the second half, Boongaard was sent behind, but Twente's keeper came out of nowhere. Havlic's attempt was blocked, but Boongaard? Come on, really? But minutes later, just what we need. Yep, just what we need. Oh, Vinicius. Boongaard, lay it off. Yes! Lucas Havlik takes the lead for Go Ahead Eagles. Twente really didn't provide much today, as Go Ahead Eagles would go on and win the KNVB Cup for the very first time. It's a shame this wasn't the last game of the season, as the team needed to focus on an Eredivisie title chase. Could Go Ahead build upon their new trophy cabinet? Well, it needed a Feyenoord loss due to their goal difference. That wouldn't occur against NAC Breda or Groningen, so PSV was the best chance. Go Ahead matched them in their games with Volendam and AZ, but Sparta Rotterdam were making things difficult. It'd be over if they couldn't do it here. However, off the bench, Monsalve did, as he had a cool finish in the 73rd minute, giving Go Ahead a chance. Unfortunately, Feyenoord would defeat PSV with a lone Rangers finish. On the final day versus Heerenveen, they scored twice in the first half and would claim the title with a 3-0 victory. Those draws from earlier really did cost Go Ahead, who won their game. Another step was made, but there was still work to do. Finishing second meant that Go Ahead would have to go to the third round qualifying of the Champions League thanks to the coefficient drop. The good news, however, was that 20 million was given to spend, so expect a lot of business next season. However, the real devastating news of today is that Feyenoord beat Go Ahead in the U18 playoff final 2. A penalty shootout to keep the Champions League dream alive.
You ever ask a man how he's doing and he says, I'm alright. I'm here to tell you, that man is not alright.
It was an unlucky draw that saw Go Ahead Eagles face Sporting Clube de Portugal. In order to prepare for this and the upcoming Eredivisie campaign, transfers had to be made. Goodbye to Vinicius Souza and Chroo, as they left for 12 and 10 million separately. Sayonara to Guillaume as well, whose initial fee quintupled. So, who arrived? Firstly, the free transfers of Rick Hardsdorp, Thomas Araujo, and Branko van de Boomen, who'd all provide depth and tutoring. Another right wing back arrived with Robert Marcos of Paraguay, a fairly cheap deal, which was similar with Ludogorets's Alian Timov for 3.5 million. They'd be joined by another young prospect in Fiti Ayash, who would sometimes play in the back. That was until his Feyenoord stinker in the Johan Cruyff Schal, as that sometimes is now rarely. Then, the big transfer would be attacking midfielder, President David Palmer.
I was told this is an urgent matter.
An absolute stud for 9.5 million. In the lead up to the Sporting tie, Crewman rejected an 8.5 million offer for Jolson, as he was still the #1 keeper.
5 hours later.
He injured his hip 5 hours later. So, Hoffenheim's Morris Streichspire was bought for 9.25 million and saved Thiago Thomas's penalty. He'd also save Jose Marsa's. Go Ahead would then easily defeat Lech Poznan in the final qualifying round, returning to the Champions League. Sadly, all these matches were impacting the Eredivisie campaign, with Valvik stunning the side on opening day.
Damn!
There was also a home loss to Ajax prior to September, with Stefan Baumgart showing Crewman up. On deadline day, Todd Bowley barged through and spent 24 million on Haydar, with some bonuses down the line. now a center back was required, and his replacement came from the Samba land itself. Lidimar Adamati of Santos arrived for 13.75 million, and the club had enough funds for another purchase. This time, Fluminense's Wendell, an 18.5 million transfer whose only fault is his injury proneness. Where have I heard that before? Well, he scored off the bench on his debut versus Twente, where the club smoked them 3-0. Against Peg Zwolle, they were winning against their local rivals in what was looking like a dominant display. Maybe this is the moment I'll talk about them. Forget about them, because the real fixture was with Feyenoord. FC Eindhoven were defeated prior, but it was a must-win against a club who barely won the league last season. They made so many transfers, but the key one would be Mateo Kovacic.
That's a nice side. That's a nice side, but he's fit.
Now 35, Go Ahead tried to lure him, but he wanted over 50k a week. He played for Chelsea this entire time and won multiple trophies, including 2 Premier Leagues. He'd also helped Feyenoord win, as preventing multiple inside passes didn't work, with Faraz getting the lone goal, as things were beginning to shape up for Jan Dahl Thomason. You've been waiting and praying for it, but Schallen gets to play his cousin, Erling Haaland.
I think you are the only one that maybe know how to score a lot of goals.
This monumental matchup will be watched by millions. But how was the Champions League going? Molde and Rennes were barely defeated, while 1-1 draws occurred versus both PAOK and Benfica. No losses, but with Haaland as your next opponent, good luck. I compare him to rolling a dice. If you roll a 1, he has a stinker. If you get a 2, he misses a bunch of chances. 3 is a goal. 4 is a brace. 5 will be a hat trick. And 6 means he completely obliterated you. While nullifying Haaland was an impossible fate, Schallen would actually grab one himself to bring Go Ahead within 1. However, we already know about the dice roll, with Haaland claiming a hat trick. Nevertheless, a really good effort. With a win versus Valencia in December, top 8 was still a possibility. A playoff spot would be guaranteed, as Conceição and co were no match for Havoc and Boongard. A win versus Leverkusen at home would just about guarantee top 8, as Boongard's 36-minute goal seemed more than enough. But in the 88th minute, pain struck, as Bajcetic scored a near-post corner to equalize. That header would cost Go Ahead, as those drop points would force them in the playoff round, where they later face AC Milan. Could Feyenoord's run be ending? Well, not before a frustrating Utrecht draw. Nevertheless, when a job interview request arrived on Kroemen's desk, he was confused. Why would the manager who led Feyenoord to 3 straight Eredivisie titles leave? Premier League money. At the time, the gap between them was 5 points, which would remain until the new year. Noteworthy moments included Wendell scoring a brace versus AZ Alkmaar and a last-minute winner against PSV. In the 8 matches, there were 7 wins, with the sole loss being against Heerenveen, where the team decided to be morons. Regardless, the moment where Feyenoord finally slipped was on matchday 17, where they drew Eindhoven. They do it again 2 matchdays later, while Go Ahead defeated Groningen with a Sol Inmakali goal. Woefully, he tore his back muscle in that game, which sounded very painful. Still, it bridged the gap within 2, which didn't last long at all, as Emmen stunned everyone with a Bergzorg brace 7 days later. With long injuries to 2 of the cams, and not wanting Scott Guest to get significant minutes, a loan came on January's deadline day. Guillermo Santos was the player, and immediately got off the Amsterdam Schiphol airport, took a train to Deventer, made his debut in the Dutch Cup versus ADO Den Haag, scored, and got an assist. One last notable moment from January was Boongard's poker versus Utrecht. He dedicated the goals to Tati Castellanos as he watched his highlights versus Real Madrid the night prior. It was AC Milan. Managed now by Mikel Arteta, they have won 3 Serie A's in the first half of this adventure. Their team is relatively familiar, but has guys like Schutalo, Zaniolo, Di Marco, for some reason, Renato Sanchez, and Mateus Nunes. So in the first leg, it was a good old defensive battle, but the worrying thing for Go Ahead is that the second leg is at the San Siro. AC Milan are European royalty, despite not winning it in over 20 years. Plus, Adamati got injured, and Kroemen decided to change his instructions. It clearly was a mistake, with all the pressure coming from the home side. Telling the team to focus was futile, and in the 40th minute, Milan would open the scoring. The clown reverted everything back, and Boongard would score right from the kickoff. A lot of action happened in the remaining 50 minutes, making it look really even. However, it went to extra time, and Milan were starting to take control. In the second half, they'd hit the post, reloaded the play, and found a simple pass to Leao, taking the aggregate lead. Go Ahead couldn't get an equalizer, and were eliminated. After the disappointing exit, there was a double header versus Feyenoord. On the way there, Valbeek were edged out 2-1 thanks to Boongaard's 93rd minute winner, and Veve was the same score in the KMV Becker. PSV were dealt with 2-0, Heracles Almelo was another 2-1 thanks to a Schallen brace. While Heerenveen frustrated once again as it required an 89th minute equalizer from Schallen. So, with a chance to make the KMV Becker final, Feyenoord were in the way. Oliver Glasner was now the coach, and he uses the same exact formation as Crewman. On paper, it seemed like it'd be as exciting as a Jigglypuff Ditto in competitive Smash Bros. But in reality, the Eagles took the lead 16 minutes in, thanks to Boongaard being dropped into a shadow striker. A few more chances were arriving, until a cross from nowhere landed on Van de Beek's head and into the back of the net. A few more scares arrived, but the game went to extra time. The first half provided nothing, and with the players on the verge of collapsing, a penalty was won thanks to Gotzi. Schallen would bulldoze the ball in the middle, and he would confirm the victory with a brace minutes later. Another cup final on the way. With both teams absolutely exhausted for the Eredivisie fixture just days later, the 5-point gap between the two sides would change. The lone goal would come after the half, with Havlik finding David Palmer. A clean sheet was kept, meaning Go Ahead are within 2 points of Feyenoord. Ajax would also lose, making things interesting with 8 matches remaining. After a simple victory over Pek Zwolle, Ajax were next. They had one bad month earlier in the campaign, seeing Baumgart getting a harsh sacking. Their new manager was Nuno Espirito Santo, who finished the sabbatical lasting for over 2 years. A win versus them at the Johan Cruyff Arena would be fantastic. A draw would still keep things alive, and a loss would make things close to impossible. The away side were looking like the stronger team, as in the 28th minute, Boongaard was found in behind and calmly took the lead. A crucial goal, which was nullified prior to the half, as Maracos decided to not look at the ball, as it smacked him in the head, giving Kudus an easy finish. Why was he even there? It was their first shot of the game, but Go Ahead would stay calm and take advantage of an Ajax mistake themselves, seeing Boongaard find the bottom corner. Everything was going well, and as full time was approaching, Crewman decided to shut things down as he heard someone in the crowd yell, "Park the bus." Despite dropping the line, a simple Malacia long ball found Carrillo behind, and with minutes left, he'd equalize. Feyenoord then smoked Heerenveen to regain a 4-point lead. The top 3 all won their next fixture, keeping the standings the same, with 5 remaining. The Thrilla in Manila, West Germany versus Argentina, the Roadrunner and Wild E Coyote, all behind the most anticipated rematch ever. The 2029 Dutch Cup final between Go Ahead Eagles and FC Twente, and this one was livelier than the last. You didn't have to wait too long for a goal, as Mohamed Kamara's brilliant pass found Palmer for the lead. The president was feeling it, later taking a half volley from distance, but Havlik's rebound was offside. With this looking like last year's final, that soon changed when a Twente corner was knotted in out of nothing. And just minutes later, the tables turned. That should be fun. What just happened? Why didn't you jump? 2 subs were made for the wingbacks at halftime, but the attackers were having stinkers. So with 13 minutes left, all the subs were made, but the time kept diminishing. Okay, let's go. Envakali wins the ball back. Palmer now finds Wendell. Wendell, our Brazilian wonder, equalizes it. Let's go. Camera would hit the post in the 95th minute, so extra time arrived. And with Gramai somehow not scoring this, penalties would decide everything. And Mokali and Sadilek opened their accounts, and Palmer followed. But Har would be stopped by Strikespire. Van de Boomen converted next, and Twente would too. Camera to make it 4-2. Camera, this is where our bad takers pop up. No, Isaka. He scores. Now Wendell. He scored the game-tying goal. Can he score from the spot? Hits the post. What is this? Juarez now can win the cup for Twente. He stopped as well. Oh gosh. Oh, FT Mob does the safe thing and kicks it in the middle. Pedersen needs to score to keep Twente alive, and he tucks it beautifully. Gurmai, our Norwegian defender, he scores. He tucks it well. Pionkovsky stepping up the pole. It stopped. It is stopped! Back-to-back Dutch Cups that would make Kroeman an icon at the club. But just like last season, the same question arrives.
What's he cooking?
This is the current situation with 5 matches remaining. It may be unlikely for Go Ahead, but with Feyenoord having to play PSV and Ajax away in the final 3 matches, all you can do is win every single one and pray. The 3 contenders would do that on match day 30 and 31. So up came PSV versus Feyenoord. And the result was a 2-2 draw. A rematch with Twente followed, with David Palmer taking an early lead. Nothing else worthwhile would occur this easily. God, I swear. They almost equalized in the 82nd too, but Go Ahead survived, while Ajax didn't. The penultimate match day would see everyone involved win, although NAC Breda did make it tough. So on the final day of the season, Go Ahead visited Vitesse, while Ajax hosted Feyenoord. Nuno's side had no hope to win the title, but there's no shot they wanted their big rivals to lift the shield on their ground. Although, a loss was needed, as a draw wouldn't be enough due to goal difference. Bungard did score 2, and while Marvin Park's goal was nerve-wracking, the 3 points were earned. However, no updates were heard throughout the other fixture, and as the final results came in, nope. Oh my gosh. This was supposed to be the headline for the season. Instead, it was looking like the funeral of Go Ahead Eagles. The Johan Cruyff Schal versus Feyenoord seemed like a good omen, as despite going into penalties, the team won. But here lies the problem. The guy who scored was the only signing made. Just 8.7 million was given, and with the sole sale of Fitziem for 6.5 million, Jonas Kjermgaard of FC Copenhagen was transferred in. Another Danish player, but this guy, similarly to Palmer, was a stud. Regardless, the side was still looking the same as last year, and had a bunch of matches in order to qualify for the Champions League. This isn't their first rodeo, but these extra games always tend to impact the start of the campaign. While things were taken easy in the Cercle Bruges tie, which helped Go Ahead win their season opener over Volendam, facing Sporting again was a pain.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
On the pitch, it was simple, but it required most of the starters to play, and that impacted the second Eredivisie match. In what looked like a sure victory, the team conceded a late equalizer by El Bozo. Okay, I renamed him that. It's not as if there were many bad results early on. Feyenoord, PSV, and Ajax were all drawn, while Valvik and Fortuna Sittard were defeated. However, something fell off, like some game was trying to haunt Kroeman. Drawing is something I'm personally not good at, but Kroeman, he must have been the descendant of Hieronymus Bosch, as he drew against Celtic, RB Salzburg, Slavia Prague, Aston Villa, and Real Madrid. The last one was surprising, of course, but even more so than the previous encounter. Never forget camera 52 minutes. They spent years wanting to get revenge against the team with Eagles in their name, and it looked like it was going to happen. However, on a goal kick in the 93rd minute, Thibaut Courtois told his team to push up, and then decided to play it relatively short to Inacio. Never pass to Inacio. The home side took advantage, leading to Schalland scoring the equalizer. The team couldn't go undefeated with draws alone, so AC Milan was next. During an international break, where Kroeman's players did not return while most of Arteta's did? What the crap, UEFA?
Hey, it's not this great!
You can guess how that went. The side did end up losing to Marseille and Newcastle as well, failing to qualify for even the playoff round with only 5 points. The loss to AC Milan was the first of the campaign, and another one followed to AZ Alkmaar. Did they deserve it? Absolutely not! But when you have Bumgard and Wendell hitting the post, while Ogard's woodwork header goes in, what can you do? Despite the first loss in the Eredivisie, the side did go on and win the next 4 in a row, placing them just 6 points behind Feyenoord, despite the bumps so far. The following opponent was a rival that didn't get to be revealed last time out. On a fine morning, Kroeman was leading the practice. Okay, it was actually Naldo. Kroeman was just sipping coffee in the office facing the pitches. Regardless, he did notice something above the training ground. A large balloon that was just out in the open. It was annoying Kroeman, so he went out and threw a rock at it. It bursted, landing on the ground. After picking up the rubble, it was clear the culprit was Zhang Ji, the Chinese man who became Utrecht manager last year after their promotion and tycoon takeover. They hired him from Guangzhou,
Guangdong Tigers. Ni hao! Ni hao!
a club he was at since 2010 and one he played for in 2023 at age 42. Kroeman's dislike for him began when they tried to buy Mario Dorgelis, and the 3-3 from the previous campaign didn't help either. The first fixture between the two this season didn't have many chances, but the spying clearly worked for Utrecht as a terrible Danny Gomez strike ricocheted off De Bogen's noggin and went in. Thankfully, wins continued for the remainder of the calendar year, with Emmen getting destroyed by a variety of goals, while Cambuur witnessed a Boomgaard hat-trick. Excelsior was a little more difficult, with Gustil scoring a lone goal. Feyenoord were still charging on, and with January arriving, disaster struck. Release clauses. And Go Ahead had several players with them. Unfortunately, one of them was activated, as the Brazilian center back Adamati had the future in his hands. Despite the reports saying he's a fairly inconsistent performer and doesn't enjoy big matches, he was the best performing defender last season and had very few moments of fraudulence. With his move to Chelsea delayed for work permit reasons, he, for some reason, was still training, and after a robust challenge, broke his foot. When he arrived at Stamford Bridge for his medical, he obviously failed it, as he couldn't walk. The good news was that the Brazilian wanted to stay and sign a new contract. In the meantime, I will continue not to talk about PEC Zwolle, as they absolutely stole this match. It was 1-0 late, with a lot of chances missed, but Angerer was able to equalize it. Then, in the 93rd minute, Go Ahead were chasing, but it was Zwolle on the ball, sending a pass to Angerer again, who stole the 3 points. That was the official halfway point of the season, and the 10-point deficit to Feyenoord worsened.
Pain and suffering are all you have to look forward to now.
In a span of a week, Vitesse were played twice for some reason, and Go Ahead lost both. Krooman was losing his mind, as he lost his cool at several journalists, storming out each time. So, with a disastrous January, Go Ahead were 16 points behind Feyenoord. A lot of football to be played, but this team was having a crisis. But the only improvement made in January was a loan at left back for Colin Vicky. He played alright, but it was an expensive loan. With no intriguing central defenders on the market, Krooman decided to adjust the formation for the remainder of the campaign. He moved one center back into midfield and decided to play a 4-1-2-2-1, which eventually changed to a 4-4-2 diamond. The changes helped with Volendam and FC Eindhoven being defeated. In the latter fixture, Wendell scored a hat-trick, and did so again against the Bozo Zhangji in the Dutch Cup. Utrecht were up again not long later in the league, where Krooman was super cocky. He was confident of upstaging aged FC Utrecht. Kenny Rocha Santos took that personally, scoring twice within 6 minutes, giving Go Ahead a 2-1 loss. In the post-match press conference, Krooman went berserk. Emotions were high, as this was following another loss in the league to NAC Breda, where goalkeeper Strijkspire had been utter trash. So, he was sent to the reserves. Ulsen wasn't much better, but at least the club won the next 2 fixtures. The good news in all this pile of mediocrity was the club made the Dutch Cup semi-final, where they had to play Feyenoord.
Texting me saying, how am I feeling, mate? Yeah, how are you feeling? How are you feeling?
Feyenoord were having a ridiculous campaign. They were 14 points above second and 17 above Go Ahead. The amount of ins and outs throughout the years are too high to count. However, some key players for them were Thiago Thomas, who scored 22 in the league, Badr Ali Hassan from United Arab Emirates, who scored 19 and assisted 7, Dodo, who had 16 assists from right back, Nelson Carvalho scoring 12 and assisting 6, Ndika leading the back line, Johan Gonzalez being the midfield maestro, and of course, they still had Donny van de Beek. Krooman claimed to be a better manager than Glasner, which to be fair, may have been true, as the guy ditched Feyenoord for Atletico Madrid after Mourinho got sacked.
Sorry.
It's worth mentioning that Krooman got a job interview first, but that's besides the point. Glasner's replacement was looking like Labadia, and if you watch the Bundesliga, you'd know that would be a great appointment for the rest of the league. Sadly, Domenico Tedesco was revealed as the coach. He never lasts long at a club, but the initial season is usually pretty good. That's why they not only excelled in the Eredivisie, but the Champions League as well. Maybe not at first glance, as they barely advanced to the playoff round, but in that stage, they overcame a 3-0 deficit to Leipzig and won the second leg at home 4-0, in big part to Stavanovic's hat-trick. In the round of 16 versus Aston Villa, they faced former coach Jan Dahl Tomasson. In the home tie, they obliterated them with a 3-0 triumph and survived the second leg, advancing to the quarters. Now their fairy tale run ended as they lost to Bayern. Embarrassingly, they had a man advantage in the first leg for 80 minutes, but still lost. However, going back in time to March 6, 2030, Go Ahead had to visit them in order to keep some sort of respectability for their campaign. Of course, Boomgaard missed an early chance, but his strike partner, come on Wendell from Brazil, Bungard would continue not to score, but he could afford those misses, as the man from Brazil continued the Samba party by getting his second. Bungard would finally score, although he was offside. Nevertheless, Feyenoord were non-existent, as Wendell wouldn't get his hat-trick, but Joe Bellingham would get the team's third, and help the side advance to a third straight KNVB Becker final. Feyenoord can win the Eredivisie, but any sane person would rather win that Pinecone trophy rather than a damn shield. In the final, it unfortunately wouldn't be Twente, as they lost on pens to NAC Breda in the quarters. NAC Breda, whose aggregate score with go-ahead this season was 3-3, would defeat Vitesse in the semis to advance to their first KNVB Becker final since 1974, where they lost 6-0. Their only triumph in this competition was the year prior, defeating NAC Nijmegen 2-0. Go Ahead, on the other hand, had an opportunity to be the first club since PSV in the 80s to win 3 consecutive Dutch Cups. With Wendell out and Goes still suffering another 6-month injury, the stage was set at the Kuip. NAC Breda lost their prior 4 matches, but won a penalty in the 8th minute. Reverson tucked it home, and the worst possible scenario was on its way. The fear went away quickly, as 12 minutes later, Bungard found his countryman Palmer, seeing him dink the keeper. Bungard would continue to bottle it in a big game until the 57th minute, where Palmer found him with a beautiful pass, and Bungard found the back of the net. Palmer was having an insane performance, and was subbed off late to give him a standing ovation, and to appreciate Enwal Kali, who will be leaving the club after having a fantastic career here. NAC Breda couldn't muster up anything else, as Go Ahead went on and won their 3rd straight KNVB Becker. You can call Crewman a cup merchant, but at least he's winning something. That would guarantee Europa League football, which was crucial since the Eredivisie campaign was crap. Some notable moments came in the remaining bits of the season, such as defeating Ajax and Wendell scoring 5 against PSV. Yet, it was a disastrous year, seeing Go Ahead finish in 6th. So bad. And while it was supposed to be the last campaign, I can't have it end like this. So Crewman will go again.
I have to finish the story.
Ronald Koeman never expected to have success at Go Ahead Eagles. It was initially about avoiding relegation and seeing what comes next. Now that he's had a down season after a few successful years, the objective is to beat Feyenoord. Just not in the Supercup, thanks to a lone goal.
Am I just doomed to failure for the rest of my life?
To improve his chances, several players left on a free, plus Bruckner left for $5 million. That, along with the $35 million sale of Mohamed Kamara to Rennes, increased the transfer budget to $42 million. With Strikespire being sent packing to Salzburg for nearly 10, a lot of money was in play. However, anyone really good either weren't interested or joined another team. Damn you, Everton.
Okay, yeah. It just ruined my night, but okay.
The big money move was a center back named Kweku Mumuni for $27 million from Feyenoord. Joao Felix also arrived in okay, I can't make that joke again. It was his brother who arrived for $1.6 million. For the same price, Denzel Dumfries arrived from Inter, although he lost his pace as the season went on. On the other flank, another oldie came in, Rico Henry from Burnley. The final transfer was Nicolas Bilokapic of Australia. Signed for $6 million, he was going to be the starting keeper until he got injured before the first game. That led to a loss versus Vitesse on opening day, with Jolson dropping a stinker and Dumfries getting sent off late. At least Rico Henry scored. Another problem was that Kiermgaard started to gather interest from the Premier League. With a $40 million release clause, Crewman was nervous. Thankfully, he hired a hitman to break his ribs on deadline day, although now he's out for 2 months, and he would get injured soon after. He did sign a new deal though. Because of all that, Kevin Rodriguez came in on loan from Liverpool. Thankfully, that first loss was just a blip on the road, as 4 wins came in a row, and all being clean sheets. With the 3-back returning, the lineup generally had Adamati as a wide center back, Ayache returning from a loan playing as the cover, and Germay on the left side. Marcos at this point got starts at right wing back, while Joe Bellingham was cooking as the deep line playmaker. Normally, the cams would be Havlik as the shadow striker, and David Palmer playing as the attacking midfielder on support, with Bungard up front. Depending on fitness, Bungard could drop into the shadow striker or the bench and have Wendell up front. The latter occurred versus Ajax, where not much occurred. They, along with Feyenoord, were favorites for the league, but for some reason, Ajax were the ones always underperforming. Still, this was a game Crewman wanted to win, and really pushed for it. In the 95th minute, Vink missed the chance for Ajax. Yet, the game continued to play on, with Go Ahead progressing forward. Dumfries found up Timov, and he would find an inch-perfect pass to Hugo Felix's noggin. A 96-minute winner continued the run. That was until the Europa League. With the Dutch Cup being won and finishing outside the top 2, it was Europa League football, and no qualifiers had to be played. With Lech Poznan already defeated, Aston Villa was up on October 3rd. Another encounter with the Claret and Blue, and with Chalba scoring in his own net just 12 minutes in, Chroo was feeling excited. Then Xavi Simons scored a garbage goal to equalize. To add to the stupidity, Adamati got himself sent off prior to halftime. Even worse, Villa got a penalty literally minutes after the break, but got stopped by Villa Kapic. Unfortunately, he couldn't stop a banker from former Feyenoord player Gerson Faras. He'd get one more, and his teammate Diallo would make it 4. So Yandel Thompson continues to provide nightmares. Losing a single match seemed to have stunlocked the team, as they couldn't break down Twente's bus, barely got by Fortuna Sittard, and Olympiacos. Then, a win seemed guaranteed versus Volendam, but a mistake led to Velleman equalizing the match on their only shot on target. The month ended in a hard-fought battle with Feyenoord, and with them not helping themselves in the first half, they would make up for it later, ending the match all squared. Both sides were tied in the table, behind PSV, who were doing surprisingly well. I guess Zhangji's Utrecht were good too. Just please stop spying. No. With the Hugo Felix brace versus Cambuur bringing back the winning feeling, Wolfsburg decided to halt that. So up came PSV at home, and many were anticipating a hard-fought battle.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to take you on the sights and sounds of where are we?
Wendell and Boongard completely wrecked them, but it would have been nice if one was saved for Heerenveen. More unnecessary drop points. But December was a whole lot better in the Eredivisie. 4 wins, in which David Palmer scored in every single match. Yeah, the team may have lost to Benfica in the Europa League, but with 17 Eredivisie fixtures played, the side were tied with Feyenoord, only behind by a single goal. To determine the better team, the two would play each other in January after Go Ahead won on matchday 18, while Feyenoord lost to Heracles Almelo. By this point, Kiermgaard was back, Mamuni took over Gramai as a starter, but Adamati was injured. Feyenoord were missing Thiago Thomas, and his replacement was Voss, who nearly opened the scoring in the 43rd. The game was relatively quiet, but there was one more problem. Villa Kapic was on international duty thanks to the Asian Cup. He was gone for January, which included this fixture. With a ball sent behind, Yulsen?
What the heck are you doing?
Not too long later.
How did that go in? No!
Through his legs from that angle. So Feyenoord took the lead in the table as the response was pitiful. It got even worse, as the previously mentioned David Palmer was gathering interest from Europe's top clubs. With a 58 million release clause and refusing to sign a new deal, it was Everton who spent the money, and he joined them mid-season. This was a bitter pill to swallow, but the confusing thing is that they could spend that as well as 65 million up front for Feyenoord's Thiago Thomas. All that while spending over 100 million in the summer and another 32 million on a guy named Hin Murke, while having 200 million in debt. Signings had to be made, but it was difficult to find the right players who aren't already making insane mountain wages. The transfers that were made were Mihai Marius Andreas of Farul for 5 million, close to Palmer's level, but slower and has pretty bad concentration. Then, a Polish attacking midfielder named Tobias Skopek arrived from Zagłębie Lubin for a cheap fee. On deadline day, Martin Zubimendi arrived from Real Madrid for roughly 13 million, and Adrien Ledesma from the other Madrid side came in as well. Why is he ineligible? He's played for 2 clubs? Are you kidding?
What the crap? Whoa, what did...
Apparently, it does warn you about this on the second line of the confirmation page. Off to the reserves you go, while the form in February fell off a cliff. The team missed out on the top 8 of the Europa League despite winning the final 2 games, but were able to destroy FCSB in the playoff round. The side also got victories over Heerenveen and Valvik, but didn't versus Vitesse and AZ. Finally, the Dutch Cup undefeated run came to a risk of ending. Versus Groningen, the match went to penalties after blowing 2 separate leads. In the shootout, Felix and Job missed. With it at 3-3, Groningen had to score to advance. But they didn't. Sudden death arrived, with Henry missing.
Bro, are you kidding me? Our hopes was back and now they're gone. Romeo. Oh my gosh, it stopped.
Thomas Araujo then...
No, what the crap is going on?
Groningen wouldn't miss 3 in a row as Go Ahead were knocked out of the Dutch Cup for the first time in 4 years. Could Could it get any worse?
Skill issue.
That form had them behind Feyenoord by 6 and PSV by 4. Feyenoord were able to smoke Ajax on the following fixture, while Go Ahead did the same to Volendam. However, on matchday 27, Feyenoord would slip, losing to AZ thanks to a Brian Dominguez winner. In a home match versus NAC Breda, Go Ahead were able to inch closer to them with a Wendell brace. Meanwhile, PSV drawing Vitesse meant they were sent to 3rd. Following that, Feyenoord and Go Ahead won their next 2 fixtures. The Eagles switched to a front 2, seeing both strikers score. On matchday 29, Feyenoord slipped again, drawing Volendam 1-0. The Eagles handled Cambuur with no problem, with another Boongard pen and Wendell getting on the score sheet too. Now, a 1-point difference with 5 to go. So the 30th fixture of the season was upon us, and the opponent would be PSV. Big chance came from Boongard, but he was denied. Fast forwarding to the second half, Enrico Henry was barged down in the box. Boongard recently missed a pen in a Europa League fixture that I'll mention soon, so Andreas was given the opportunity to go ahead. It seemed like the perfect chance was wasted, but the team kept pushing and changed to a 4-1-2-1-2. That saw PSV hitting the post, but in the 90th minute, finds Boongard. He keeps it down brilliantly. What a trap. Henry, Boongard. Havlik! Yes! Yes! A huge last-minute winner from Havlik, which put Go Ahead into first temporarily. With Feyenoord playing Pek Zwolle. Yes! Let's go! If every game is won, Go Ahead are champions. So let's talk about Pek Zwolle. Probably the second greatest club in the Netherlands, Pek Zwolle were founded in 1910, and their biggest rivals are Go Ahead Eagles. The rivalry is locational based, as they're both at the River IJssel and are 21 miles away from each other. According to Wikipedia, Go Ahead supporters call Pek Zwolle Ole, as Zwolle sounds too disgusting for them. Huh? I tried to learn more, but I don't know Dutch. In the Europa League round of 16, Lazio were the opponents. The club from Rome was struggling this season and were missing their key player, a 36-year-old Milinkovic-Savic, with no pace. It clearly showed, as at home, they were dismantled limb by limb as the goals kept hitting the back of the net. They nearly called a mercy rule, but the scoring would stop at 6. Despite losing the second leg 2-0, Go Ahead moved on to the quarterfinals, where they faced Sporting Clube de Portugal. Not their first rodeo, but despite Boongard missing an early penalty, Rico Henry would give the club the advantage heading into the interval. The unlikely scores continued, as 10 minutes after halftime, Ayache of all people scored with an inventive strike. That was cancelled out by Eric Call's free kick, which must have been so fast that it made Bill Cabbage dive the wrong way. Thankfully, the 2-goal lead was restored as Boongard made up for his penalty miss. The second leg was nerve-wracking. On 2 occasions, Sporting brought the aggregate within 1, but Andreas and Wendell would both score in the 71st and 80th respectively, giving Go Ahead a 6-3 aggregate triumph. In the semi-final, it was Napoli. This was happening following an important fixture with Ajax, so let's worry about that. Like I mentioned, win every game in the Eredivisie and the league is yours. However, despite Ajax not having the best of seasons, they were causing difficulties. Not only could Go Ahead not handle their press, but they were lucky that this goal was offside. The chances continued for them, and 3 minutes after halftime, Andreas basically helped Kenneth Taylor out by giving him an easier chance to score. Several changes were instantly made, which saw Boongard hit the post. Despite the manager's best effort to make something happen, it seemed like there were too many players on the team that couldn't handle the pressure, as Ajax held on and won 1-0. Feyenoord were victorious in their match, and with no European competitions to worry about, all they had to do was win these 3 games. Meanwhile, Go Ahead had to worry about Napoli, a side potentially in turmoil, as prior to the tie, the manager straight up quit to join France. Not sure why you wouldn't wait until the end of the season. Regardless, they hired Arne Slot after he got eliminated by PSV in the Conference League. Napoli weren't the same side as years ago, but they still had a really strong team, speared ahead by Raspadori. Would we get the Raspadori show? Well, these 2 missed chances may have answered that question, but Boongard finds Andreas. Yes! Andreas! As I say that, we should be able to deal with that. Ayache, man. Henry, come on. Andreas, penal. It's not going to be taken by Andreas though. We've missed 2 penalties in a row. We miss another one, but we get the rebound. Free kick on the top of the box. Is this just going to be slotted into the back of the net? What the hell happened there? Did that get deflected or? Yeah, it looks like it got deflected off my wall and in. We have a highlight. Andreas finds Wendell. And he gets stopped. Alright. Wendell's OP. Oh no, what was that? What a save. What happened there? I wasn't looking. One mistake and someone has the advantage for the second leg. How did he get around? As I was saying, oh my. Well, some performed. Others didn't. With a win versus VVV Venlo in between the legs, nothing changed in the standings, as Twente conveniently forgot how to defend against Feyenoord. Boongard unfortunately suffered an injury that meant 2 strikers were not possible, especially with Schallen out as well. So against Napoli, Wendell needed to contribute, but with him starting to ball it in these important fixtures, that would continue to happen. Napoli were defending well, and Go Ahead forgot what that meant, as Raspadori took a 2-goal aggregate lead. No one stepped up, as the Eagles were out of Europe, and the Eredivisie title was vanishing with time dwindling. Zhengzhi's Utrecht were barely defeated, while Feyenoord would do what Go Ahead couldn't do this season and defeat Vitesse. Both sides were away on the final day, with Feyenoord visiting NAC Breda and Go Ahead visiting NEC Nijmegen. A win was needed, while Feyenoord needed to lose. With multiple chances missed, it wouldn't be Go Ahead who scored first. That's so cool. One chance and they score, and Feyenoord score, brilliant. Crewman immediately left. Even if they went on and won the game, the ending was already written.